as you all know, by literally what the game that I'm playing in the background right now, I am a big Minecraft fan. I've played this game for so long that my nostalgia for the way the game used to be is like overwhelming, and now I just play like literally I'm playing Minecraft beta 1.7.3 with OG like beta version Minecraft mods installed. Like that is how much of a Minecraft boomer I am. Like chat, you got there may be new viewers watching this video that don't know. I am a Minecraft boomer. You guys know. The regular viewers in chat, the regular watchers, like the people here who watch me regularly, they know I'm playing this for a long-ass time. So as you can imagine, I'm quite tuned in to the community and the figures that are responsible for the game's creation. And back when I was super into Minecraft, initially, like when I first discovered it when I was a kid, Minecraft was being made by a single guy and his friend, who I guess you could kind of call a coworker, but like Mojang wasn't really even a real company yet, called just Notch and Jeb. Those are the two of them, Notch and Jeb, just those two guys making the game. And Notch was kind of considered, because he was the one who initially devised Minecraft and was the initial singular developer of the game. Notch was kind of considered the god of Minecraft by the community. Like, people would build their churches in Minecraft and call it like the Church of Notch or whatever. Like, people made like the Temple of Notch a very famous build in Minecraft history and whatnot. Like, people loved Notch. Jeb, on the other hand, was not anywhere near as loved as Notch for a variety of reasons. In large part, it became kind of a meme to hate Jeb and to blame every bad change Minecraft got on Jeb. So people just kind of despised Jeb to an extent. Oh, I thought that was death. People just kind of despised Jeb to an extent, but loved Notch. And so eventually, time passed and Notch started to like change. Like, initially, when Minecraft first came out, Notch was this very kind of jolly, approachable, reputationally very well-liked and nice guy. But over time, things started to change. He started to get really bitter. Like, he started to not... Ooh, diamonds. He started to not like when people at conventions and whatnot would ask him questions about, like, Herobrine or, ask him to add new features to the game. He would go on very angry rants on social media in regards to content creators. There was a very notable event where he decided to host one of the first Minecons ever in fucking Las Vegas, okay? Minecon, an event that, to be fair, Minecraft's reputation as being popular mostly with children was not solidified yet. Like, Minecraft still had a pretty large adult audience at the time. But he decided to host fucking Minecon in Las Vegas. And he invited the Yogscast to go, Lewis and Simon from the Yogscast. And they went there to do, like, a live... like episode of their like videos, right? Like, they'd play Minecraft together. It was basically like a live filming of that, essentially. TRO explains this in the video. Oh, that's cool. I have not seen this video yet. I'm literally explaining this shit from memory, guys. I was there, okay? Like, TRO does not need to lecture me on the old magic. I was there when it was written, guys. Like, I'm telling you guys what I remember from memory. I was a fucking lad when this happened. I remember all the drama. Basically, the Yogscast, Lewis and Simon did a live, like, recording of their show at this Minecon in fucking Las Vegas. Reminder, this becomes relevant in a minute. And they sweared. They sweared in this. They were on stage, and they were swearing. Not, like, overwhelmingly. Like, if you watch a Yogscast video, they aren't saying fuck, shit, ass, pussy all the time. Like, they're not super foul-mouthed, but they occasionally say some adult words. It's just very dry adult British humor they tend to engage in. And Notch lost his mind. He went on Twitter and wrote an entire thread shitting on Lewis and Simon for swearing in front of kids, claiming that they were swearing at kids. He straight up lied about what had actually happened. It was very fucked up. Hey, bye, Merrick. Have a good one. But yeah, I appreciate you coming in. But yeah, like, oh, no, we gotta get out of here. I gotta get the fuck out of here, man. Ah, shit. Okay, at least we made it back here. That might have been the most goated lava save you guys have ever seen. Oh, holy shit. Oh my god. Anyway, Notch was like progressively over time getting to be like a bigger and bigger cunt in the community, but people still generally liked him. But eventually he decided he was done with Minecraft. He didn't like the game anymore. He didn't care about the game anymore. He didn't care about the community or anything. So he simply sold the game and Mojang and all rights to it for, I believe it was $3.5 billion. No, $4.5 billion to Microsoft. And since then, he's had no part in the game. And, you know, he's just kind of been doing his own thing, being like a lonely billionaire in his Hollywood Hills house. But he eventually ended up going on to some insane rants about how trans people are insane and destroying society. He has said some stuff about the Jews. He basically came out as a full-on white nationalist, talking about the Great Replacement being real. From what we can tell, Notch is just a full-on Nazi. What the fuck is that at the window? A specter. From what we can tell, Notch is just a full-on Nazi. Cool off, wiener dog. Chill out. And yeah, since then, Microsoft has basically deleted him from mention in the game. Like, Notch isn't really mentioned at all anywhere in the game anymore, like he used to be in the splash screen, the credits, and all that stuff. So since then, Microsoft has sanitized Notch from the game entirely. Or I should say Mojang has. And with that said, Notch has gone down in history with some as a disgraced hero, and to others as somebody who people are like, whatever happened to Notch? Oh, he got canceled? Oh, he got cancel culture got him. Oh. And so, I've seen a lot of videos by popular YouTubers that cover the rise and fall of Notch, and they all really gloss over the political takes that Notch has and how Notch is very clearly a Nazi, and they try to like a lot of them will say things like Notch said some controversial stuff and they leave it at that. So I'm really, really curious if the Right Opinion video is going to completely wholeheartedly cover the things Notch has said and done. IBX Toy Cat did this. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Regardless though, as far as I know, the Right Opinion, dope-ass YouTuber, I think he watches my content. Like, I may be wrong about this, but I think the Right Opinion literally is follows me on, I think he follows me on Instagram or Twitter and watches my videos. So if he ends up seeing this, then, hey, I like your stuff too. You should follow me on Twitter if you don't already. No, but I'm excited to see this video. He generally has pretty, measured takes, but I do worry that since he isn't, a hardcore political content creator, that he's going to play down, the outright, Nazi shit that Notch was saying. So, yeah, let's take a look. I'm excited to see this.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Right Opinion, the home of a twat with too much free time, and a legacy, something that I'm sure many of us have pondered. The age-old question beckons: when we all move on from this world, what will we leave behind? The truth is, none of us can ever know for certain, because the moment we pass on, we relinquish most control of the narrative surrounding how we're remembered. People who have been considered controversial and problematic have been recontextualized.
Bro, when I die, you motherfuckers better insist the history books claim that I had many MILFs in my sex cult. Many MILFs in my sex cult. The most MILFs. All of them.
By their death, and sometimes figures previously revered have had their involvement in some very seedy antics revealed post-mortem.
It's already on my Wikipedia page.
It will take centuries to form, and in other times it will take merely days. However, one thing that remains central in analysis of individuals is the existence of art. I use the term art liberally, of course, here. I'm not just talking about a painting or a sculpture, I'm talking about the general product of any form of creative process that can affect someone's life in a meaningful way. An artist's direct words or thoughts may be long forgotten, but their creations will always serve as a window to their mind. What these works may say specifically is often down to interpretation, but there are often general themes that many people identify with, which is what provides them with a following and a reputation. Upon analysis of such content, many of us draw parallels between the pieces and the person behind them. After all, art should be a part of oneself. We enjoy identifying with others, even when it extends to maestros who we could never really hope to get near in terms of genius. For the new generation of aspiring creatives, times have somewhat evolved, particularly with the presence of social media, which enables many people to speak more directly to their chosen audience. For those who choose to use it, you may have a close-up on the person behind a beloved.
One thing that kind of makes Minecraft very unique compared to other pieces of art generally, or even other games, is how modular it is. Even though Minecraft wasn't necessarily made with modularity in mind, people modded the fuck out of it anyway. Like, Minecraft has been modded to hell and back. You could argue that the Minecraft I'm playing right now isn't even the same Minecraft, like, even when you consider updates too, like, updates as well. Like, the Minecraft I'm playing now isn't the same Minecraft that you'd be playing today, which isn't even the same Minecraft as the vanilla Minecraft that this is built on. Like, people make Minecraft their own with their own individual worlds even, but especially with mods, texture packs, and you know, they're different, like, custom content. And the core of the game's changed so much that on a certain level, I feel like you could argue that Minecraft, like the Minecraft that Notch made no longer really exists anymore. Or if it does exist, it's not really the most popular or known form of Minecraft played. Like, if anything, it's like Notch invented Minecraft, and a million people have iterated on it to turn it into their own thing, I guess. A wolf! Okay, we need to get bones.
Work, and based on their behavior, you may be able to make a summary judgment if you want to delve into their works much further. However, for all the benefits that such an experience can provide, it can also play into unhealthy parasocial relationships. One that we've spoken about in the past, particularly when said art may not appear to reflect a person's character. Yes, every now and then anomalies appear on the system. People who may have created something wonderful that many find to be an uplifting and positive force in their life may also have negatively affected others in a marked way, either due to their actions or words separate to their art. This is where the discourse surrounding distinguishing art form from the artist originates.
I already like this. I already like the way that it's being framed here. Because it's not like, oh, someone that you liked who's made good art may have takes or have done things that you don't like. It's no, just because you like a piece of art doesn't mean their actions haven't ended up hurting someone else. Just because this art that this person has made has brought so much joy to your life doesn't mean this person's actions haven't brought great suffering or misery to someone else's life. I like that. That's an interesting framing. I haven't heard it worded that way before.
Appreciating good workmanship doesn't necessarily presuppose a complete endorsement of the person behind it. However, over time, the bar for this sort of standard has definitely been lowered a little. With the rise of social media and people perhaps having a bit too much time to argue, this sort of distinction has become more and more regularly employed. A prime example of such a trend is J.K. Rowling, a previously renowned celebrity who took a political position that was contrary to many of her colleagues and fans. If she'd never sent out a tweet on the matter, many people who probably regard her with disdain would still adore her. Humans are complex, multifaceted creatures, many of whom are deeply troubled and don't necessarily benefit from the public spotlight, sometimes leaving us to wonder whether we knew them as well as we thought we did, and perhaps wishing we didn't know them quite as well now.
I will admit, being famous does have, like, even a modicum amount of fame, like niche internet celeb fame or whatever, like, even that can affect your psyche a lot. Like, some people just can't handle the praise that one gets as a popular figure online. Like, it just goes to their head too much and they can't keep themselves, like, grounded. That's pretty common. I mean, that seems to be the case with J.K. Rowling. Like, J.K. Rowling seems to have gotten so full of herself that she thought that she could come out as, like, a massive bigot and still have overwhelming broad support. And that's not what's happening. She was wrong. Like, she would rather she had overwhelming support for her takes, but, you know, that's not the case. Oh, no, no. Oh, I hate that the wolf tries to fight with me. I hate it. No. Oh, I really hate that the wolf tries to fight with me, because it makes it so likely I'm gonna send out a stray.
This is what leads us to probably the most quintessentially Gen Z example, a gentleman by the name of Marcus Persson, or as he is known to many online, Notch.
Yo.
It's about having it feel like a game. Like, what would you expect a game to do?
More like crotch.
It's
Got
like the current speed and direction of the target and multiply it by some kind of constant.
Notch is a Swedish game developer who in 2009 began a humble little project known as Minecraft. I feel like I shouldn't have to elaborate too much here, but Minecraft is a sandbox video game which enables the user to build a multitude of structures and face off against a variety of monsters who descend upon the player at dusk. It has 4 modes: creative, survival, hardcore, and adventure, each for its own type of gamer, allowing for a very broad appeal indeed.
Who remembers when Minecraft was, like, still so niche that people would call it Mindcraft? Like, people who didn't know what it was and they just heard the name once, they'd call it Minecraft. Now Minecraft's so well known, like, everyone's seen it spelled out, everyone's seen it on shirts and shit like that. Everyone knows about Minecraft, everyone knows the proper thing. But there was a time when it was just this sort of budding up game that people were playing, and it was like, Minecraft?
Over the last decade and a bit, it has amassed cross-platform sales in excess of 230 million, making it the best-selling video game of all time by a significant margin. It has also received numerous awards, franchised itself to a dizzying extent, and established itself as a cultural force to be reckoned with. Its timeless appeal being typified by its continued creation of public figures who are likely just as publicly visible as the man behind the game. But in a way, I suppose it makes sense. Many individual developers are barely a fraction as well known as the games they create. They're most comfortable making the magic happen behind the scenes, and in the case of many games, it's hardly a singular effort, and very few people end up being standout figures. Audiences can't expect to learn the entire roster of a video game studio. Notch was different though. As the figurehead behind Minecraft, he set himself apart from faceless corporations and created a unique
When Mojang was small, people, like, you guys don't even know, when Mojang was still small, like, when there was maybe 12 to 8 people working at Mojang, everybody knew the names of the Mojang devs. I think back in the day, the Sphax texture pack, like the loading screen, if you use the Sphax PureBD Craft texture pack, when you were loading up the game, it had, like, a lineup of little, like, drawings of all the different, like, people who work on Minecraft, like, an entire lineup of them. And so, like, the team behind Minecraft was so small, like, everybody knew who they were. Like, all of them were, and a lot of them were YouTubers. Like, for example, Lydia Winters was a Minecraft chick on YouTube. She was a YouTuber, like a very early on OG Minecraft YouTuber who ended up just getting hired to work as, like, I guess, like, a public-facing sort of, like, PR manager of Mojang, I would guess. Like, I don't know what her exact position is, but that's what I'd guess it is.
bond with his audience, utilizing the game's network and accompanying social media platforms to create this almost legendary figure in gaming circles who would interact and respond to feedback from many of the devoted audience. To many, Minecraft and Notch were inseparable. Well, until they weren't.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Were you the Minecraft guy?
No.
Cut to 2022 though, and trying to find any remnants of even the word Notch on Minecraft servers would be a challenge to even the most ardent user. Persson, unsurprisingly, had cashed out his shares in 2014, making a tidy $1.7 billion, and adopting a lifestyle that supported that. In many ways, he had done what many creatives wish they could do: walk away with a shit ton of money and have your legacy commemorated and honored by many users and creators. However, barely a couple years after he'd become a billionaire, Notch began to publicly head down a curious path, one that gradually became more and more questionable to those who looked on, and eventually resulted in Microsoft, the company who had bought out Minecraft, to cut all public ties with him in the hopes that a PR nightmare would be averted. It seems that in spite of his undeniable contribution to modern culture, certain people believe he would be better off forgotten altogether. Well, today we're going to be paying him a bit of time, taking a look at the man behind Minecraft, the mind that married the creation, the eventual and painful divorce, and what
Oh, fuck, I totally forgot about that. So for those of you guys that don't remember, Notch was initially married and in a relationship when Minecraft initially took off. His wife's username was EZ, just EZ. That's a little bit of a unfortunate username for your wife to have in the game you made, like Easy. I guess that's just a little weird. But yeah, her username was EZ, I remember. And that was Notch's wife, and they had a divorce. And that was pretty much the end of it. I was, pretty young at the time, so I didn't have much interest in, like, the love life of the creator of Minecraft, I guess. Like, I didn't care about his divorce or anything. But what ended up happening, I guess, was it was, like, a pretty rough one, especially when you consider the fact that, like, after Minecraft blew up and Notch sold the game, it's very clear he got bitter and lonely. So I wonder if, like, he got his dream in terms of achieving wealth and fame and success, but in the process ended up losing his relationship, and it just wasn't worth it, I guess.
Legacy may be left behind. Ladies, gentlemen, and all other flavors of quarks, I think it's best we go to the
Yeah,
start.
old splash text, true zoom.
Dare I say it, to a world without Minecraft. Let's go. This video is sponsored by Aura, and the following ad is only suitable for US citizens. So if you're with me in Old Blighty, then put on a cup of tea or something.
Austin, you're healing me. Heal me, you what, are you dumb?
Afford something like that, and how exactly is that going to help me?
Can we group up already?
Okay, we're not watching the sponsorship, okay? Our boy gets paid regardless of if we watch it or not. Though definitely go down in the description below and, or not in the description, to the pinned comment below, and click on the original video and give it a view and a like, and maybe even comment on it as well if you're super base. Say that Zan sent you. That is the best thing you can do.
The decade is the 1980s. Technology is emerging pretty quickly, with various movements in the industry taking the world by storm.
Damn, we're
with
going
many
far
pieces of
back.
media romanticizing its popularity. However, enthusiasm for that sector was still treated with disdain by some, and as many 80s coming-of-age films will likely tell you, the cool kids were still the ones who could flatten some poor sod in a game of football. For many, forms of technology were an outlet to keep them away from the toxic social hierarchies they felt they couldn't compete in. And by the 80s, one of the very important branches of technology was the video game. In early times, you would have to commute to the arcade to have a taste of what video games actually entailed. But with the increased commercial reach and accessibility of consoles, the market opened up much more to those who enjoyed the pastime of gaming. Not just one of those people who wasn't really interested in being the coolest at school. Deeply fascinated by mechanics from a young age, he spent much of his time indoors, initially taking a keen interest in LEGO,
He was
but
a
soon
neat-
turning his attention to his personal Commodore 128 computer, either playing it or programming
I'm just gonna say it. Notch was a massive NEET when he originally started development of Minecraft. He's probably still a NEET, just living in a massive mansion. But Notch is a NEET.
it, much of the time with codes from a magazine network that his father was subscribed to. At the age of 8, he produced his first video game, one that he reassuringly informed an interviewer was basic. Back then, these sorts of pastimes were vocational to many. Very few people knew exactly where artificial intelligence would be in 20 years' time, with some still arguing the idea that an online network could never be achieved, and others claiming it would just be a fad regardless. But over the years, it continued to defy many of its detractors, with persisting developments and watershed moments that set the bar higher and higher in scientific accomplishment. With an expanding industry in an expanding market, a person who had dropped out of high school likely sensed an opportunity. His mother put him on a programming course to hone his talent, and by the time he was 18, he had his first job. After a few rocky periods in between, he was one of the first developers
What?
hired by a Stockholm-based company then known as Midas Player, later to become King, the corporation who made the legendary
Huh! I didn't know that Notch worked on the, worked at the place, at the studio that made the fucking shitty phone games like Candy Crush. That's where he started, I guess.
Candy Crush saga, inescapable from the daily lives of all, from our phones to our skylines. Person worked on a fair few games during his 4 to 5 year stint at the company. However, he always kept one of his eyes on a few side projects that he would work on in his free time, developing a fair few games to boot. In 2006, he released the Java-based game Worm Online, a game he had developed
What?
with longtime
never
friend
heard of
Rolf Jensen, a sandbox MMO where players could construct buildings, mine for materials, and craft tools. Sound familiar? Well, there were
Huh! I've literally never heard about that. This is literally brand new information to me. I'd never heard of that before. It's like a super granular MMO. You cut every board. That sounds awesome. That's the type of autism that I have. That's exactly what I need. Hold on. Did a game better than Minecraft get made by Notch before Minecraft even come out? Worm Online, does it still exist? It has a big cult following? Scrolls? I knew about Scrolls, but I didn't know about Worm.
There were a few differences. It's definitely a bit more complex, probably leaning more into games like RuneScape for its more detailed visuals and skill level system that provides people with a clear roadmap to mastery of the arts. However, there's also a more factional element that allows people to join villages and alliance, declare on others if they want, alongside a religious system that allows people to worship a certain deity, each one having their own unique perks. It provides an arrangement where users essentially create their own lore and history within the game. It's a clever system, and the game does appear to have some popularity to this day. But in 2007, the year after Worm was first released, Notch stepped away from his commitment to the game and the studio, then known as Mojang Specifications AB. Despite moving on from this venture, Persson wished to retain the namesake Mojang for his next project. However, afraid of market competition, Midas Player...
I miss when that was the name of Mojang. I think it's just Mojang now, but I remember when you'd boot up Minecraft and it always said Mojang Specifications AB was the name of the company. I don't know why, but I always found that very charming. Like, part of Minecraft's charm was just how overwhelmingly, like... Huh. We found a wild wolf poop. Did you drop this? I doubt it. Because I don't think they did mod compatibilities back then where, like... I don't think those would drop wolf poops. Interesting. Maybe wild ones drop them? Interesting. Okay.
Barred him and all employees from making games in their free time. However, clearly valuing his individual creativity, Notch responded by quitting his job, taking up work at a friendlier employer, and dedicating the following months to replicating a game by the name of Infiniminer.
Yep, I've heard of Infiniminer. So this is where I've literally never heard of anything that came before this point in the video. Like, I felt like I was pretty aware of my Minecraft knowledge and, like, my backstory to all of that. I've never seen a video that discusses the history of Minecraft that brought any of the things that he's brought up here up. Like, usually the videos start here when he made Infiniminer. Or RubyDung. Did he make RubyDung? I think I don't remember. I think it was based on that or something. I forget. He made a few games, but, like, usually it's Infiniminer is where it starts. Interesting.
Infiniminer is a block-based sandbox game in which a player harvests minerals by cutting through procedurally generated maps. Sound familiar? Well, yeah, this one should really. Infiniminer was released by indie developer Zachtronics, named after its founder, Zach Barth. It wasn't particularly hyped on release and hadn't created large groundswell after, but it caught the attention of Marcus, who said that although it had clear character, still left a lot to the imagination. At the time, Marcus had been working on a project known as RubyDung, a base-building game in which he'd experimented with a feature that enabled first-person perspective, but ultimately felt it was too undeveloped in its current format.
Did you notice the cobblestone texture in that game is the same one he uses for Minecraft later on? It's just differently colored in Minecraft. It's just straight up gray, but in that it's like sort of got different gradient colors that give it sort of that analog game kind of analog horror game look, almost. Kind of liminal looking, yeah.
Persson admired many aspects of Infiniminer, he wished to create an environment that leaned into the more RPG theme, one that would emphasize survival in the wilderness. He also wanted to focus on details of the in-game experience, sound effects that would relate to each individual action, and how a player base may respond to that.
There it is, the first version.
On May the 13th, 2009, Notch, using an account by the name of Nizotch on YouTube, posted a video titled Cave Game Tech Tests. This upload was well received by users at the time, and a couple days later he seemed to have settled on a name: Minecraft. In this time, Notch continued to post updates to his YouTube channel and personal Tumblr blog that followed progress on the game pretty closely. 4 days after posting Cave Game Tech Test, he opened up the game to the public, providing users with a link if they wish to play it themselves.
So this was when Minecraft first became, like, broadly publicly available to, like, any audience that was outside of, like, Notch's friends and, like, a few select people. It was when it was the jar was dropped on this forum, and because you literally had to be on some obscure forum to get Minecraft initially, this is why so much of Minecraft's initial player base was so much older than its current player base. Minecraft started out with like 100% of its players being in their like mid to late 20s and 30s and whatnot when it first came out, and it wasn't until YouTubers, who themselves were adults, popularized Minecraft that it started to get big with kids. So we're talking like very early in the game's inception here, and the audience for the game has changed over time as well. It's just kind of an interesting thing.
Notch predominantly used forums for the independent game source to distribute his new project, the same one that he had found Infiniminer on. There wasn't any real big promotional push, nor was there any large investment from companies who believed in the project. It was the true definition of an indie game. Just over 20 years after he had created his first game on the Commodore 128, he had published a humble sandbox game on Java. But the world was a lot larger now and dominated by companies who had 1,000,000 times the resources of a person like Persons. Indie games were a dime a dozen, and Notch's couldn't have been that unique, right?
Whew, it blew the fuck up. Wow, it's a lot of fish. Jesus. Being part of the initial blow-up of Minecraft was very interesting. When I was younger, like so you'll hear a lot of people say like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, you couldn't be a gamer because you'd get made fun of. Yeah, like nowadays, it's fine for everybody to be a gamer and everybody games now. But when I was a kid, it was only the nerdy kids who get bullied that played video games. And it's like, dude, you're 19. You're 19 years old. What are you talking about? Because I know that when I'm 23, and when I was younger, when I was in middle school, everybody played video games. Everybody played video games. What made you uncool was what video games you played. The cool video games to play were like any sports games like Madden and all that stuff, and Call of Duty and Battlefield. Those were the games that you could like be cool and play back then. Minecraft, on the other hand, when it was first getting big, and that's when I was getting into it, Minecraft, on the other hand, was a whole different story. People like that were my age back then took one look at Minecraft, and because they were so conditioned to value like graphics and, you know, how violent the game is and whatnot as being cool, they didn't like Minecraft initially. Like, especially kids at my middle school, I got made fun of a lot for being into Minecraft when it first was like really blowing up, and I had my like clique of friends who played it, and then everybody else was not into it. Nowadays though, like, everybody plays Minecraft and everybody is into it, right? But like back then, it was so weird being part of this game that was like being into this game that was blowing up massively online. Like, you literally couldn't escape it on the internet, but in real life, you were kind of shamed for playing it. And then it got really popular when it came out on Xbox and PlayStation. The second it came out on consoles, all those same kids started playing it. And it came out like over summer, if I remember correctly. I came back from like summer or winter break and everyone was playing it. And we're like, yeah, what do you mean Minecraft on computer? What are you, a hacker or something? Like, are you a cheater? Do you cheat? Is that why you play Minecraft on computer? And I was like, it came out on computer first. I'm like, no, it didn't. It literally just came out. Like there were literally kids who had given me shit for playing it like months before, saying Minecraft had just came out and that it was a brand new game that had just come out on console. I was like, I've been playing it for like a year on PC. They're like, no, you haven't. You're lying. Like, I'm gonna knock the shit out of you. I wanted to. I really did.
Very few people know when they're making their magnum opus that it will be their magnum opus.
True. Dude, do you think I knew that fucking racist versus pedo thumbnail that I put 2 minutes of effort into just throwing together really quick? Do you think I knew that was going to end up being my magnum opus? I did not. It just happened. It just happened.
You You can speculate how people will receive it, but you can never foresee public reaction. And you can never account for every single issue that a consumer might point out. When Notch first made the game playable, there were more than enough issues to count, and many people were the first to let him know. However, there was definitely something unique about Minecraft from the off. I'm not going to go through every detail because there are creators out there who are much more enthusiastic than me and have made far more in-depth videos. But I think the best way to summarize would be to say that it, on one hand, being a rather simple sandbox, allowed for a rather broad range of virtual realities, one where a world could be built around your vision. At the same time, the RPG element, the first-person perspective, gave it a more competitive element and rewarded a person for proficiency and skills required for survival. Whereas Notch's previous game, Worm, had a system built on levels that was meant to supply an outward motive for mastery, Minecraft's was inherent. It was a simple system, but it was one that worked, and one that you progressed through naturally. A bedrock so basic that can create a world so complex. I think the best thing that can be said about the game is that you never have the exact same experience twice. And for many, that was embodied by the existence of Minecraft. The familiar aspects were there, you never had to relearn the fundamentals, there was never an alienation of experience, and many of the processes were as simple as a few clicks. But the opportunities branched off each time you decided to take your experience to the world in a new direction. The visual design was unvarnished, making it undemanding to PCs and accessible to many users, still retaining its own charm and
I mean, the graphics are definitely, like, if the graphics were better, it would, not be good for most PCs. That's definitely the case, but Minecraft is notoriously poorly optimized, so it's like the graphics, you know, they help. Them being not great helps, but it's just a poorly optimized, fundamentally badly made game. The term is spaghetti code. Notch himself has called it his spaghetti code, is what the entirety of this game is built on. And they tried to change it with Bedrock Edition, but Bedrock Edition is somehow worse than Java, so yeah, Minecraft is, until they like fundamentally like change the core of the game to make it more accommodating to what it needs to be capable of for modern day gaming experiences, is kind of fundamentally fucked because of Notch's incompetence. So yeah, sorry. That's just kind of the fact of things.
Feeling that it was intentional. It was also assisted by a bare-bones yet effective soundtrack and sound design by C418, another frequent user of the independent game source forum. His work can be identified by most from a single chord, and that's impressive. Yet a game is more than its premise, and can never be flawless on launch. That couldn't be more applicable to a game like Minecraft, which Notch decided to make playable from the preliminary stages of production. Now, Notch couldn't necessarily afford his own.
Minecraft was the first ever early access game that I'd ever been exposed to. Like, before Minecraft, the games that I played were, like, mostly console games for starters, because I mostly only ever played on consoles before Minecraft. And, like, they're just discs. Like, you just buy a disc from the store, and that's the game. Like, the game was finished, and it came out, and you have to wait for it to come out and everything. The concept of, like, a pre-released game, like a game that, like, lets you play it maybe for free, but maybe for usually for a lesser price before it's finished so that you can test it. That was an unthinkable idea to me, and Minecraft was the first game that I ever had it exposed to me with, right? And nowadays, like, early access games are almost the norm in the gaming industry now. Like, a lot of games get released in early access now. It's not unusual, but back then, at least as far as I'm aware, it was pretty unusual. Minecraft kind of set that standard to a degree.
Game testers, so he relied on the feedback from the users.
Updates,
You could tell that when it was first published, it was still in its teething era. Although many people enjoyed it, Marcus was inundated with recommendations and requests from gamers who felt their experience could be enhanced. And Notch was on it, regularly responding to people and applying updates as soon as his day job was finished. Within 3 days of making the alpha open to all users, he had added a variety of features and continued to do so over the coming weeks, including a multiplayer mode at the turn of June. Much of this was conferred through the forums, but it soon expanded to his personal blog and equivalent social media that became dedicated to following the progress of the game as it garnered more and more interest from the wider internet. With the increasing popularity and knowledge that he would probably need funds to sustain development, Notch moved the game into a paid alpha stage for those who wanted a few more modes at their disposal.
It was like
Unlike a lot of
$7.
indie games trying to capitalize on the popularity, Notch actually made the decision to make his game a bit more expensive than he had.
If I remember correctly, the game was like $7 initially, and then it went up to like $12, and now it's at $26.95, which is where it's been for a very long time. The game was not $26.95 when I got it. It was actually quite a bit cheaper. I think it was in that like interim period. Like it wasn't $7. I think it was like $12 when my mom bought my account for me as a kid.
Initially valued it, linking an essay explaining the importance of not underselling indie games. In spite of this, many people happily obliged and continued to spread the word, leading to a snowball effect that resulted in more and more users. Videos, tweets, posts onto a variety of social media websites continued to serve as Notch's own unpaid promotional campaign, and gave Persson all the time he wanted to focus on quality control. And to be fair to him, that's exactly what he did. With the rate of unexpected success that Notch was experiencing, it would have been easy for him to rest on his laurels or sell his work on to an eager investor. However, with each passing day, he only seemed to dedicate more and more time to perfecting and updating the craft of this humble mining game. His proactiveness in actually attending to problems and responding to feedback didn't seem to let up, even as the game seemingly expanded beyond a single person's capability. He switched his day job to part-time, hired a couple people to help him manage designs, but still placed himself at the creative control panel of this undertaking, maintaining activity and status of the forums that had so graciously supported his project. He was still a one-man army, and amongst many was quickly obtaining status as a bit of a cult figure. However, things were beginning to spiral out of control a little. In the first year, the game moved around 25,000 copies, pretty good for an indie game. But in 2010, it began to garner even more traction, selling thousands of copies in the space of a day.
That's when I got
much
my
income
copy.
was being generated from sales that, suspecting fraud, PayPal froze his account, which subsequently just generated more publicity. I mean, the dude was
Dude, imagine you're just some guy and you have now like a group of friends that you're just paying to help you with development, and you're making this game that's blowing the fuck up, and like your account, your PayPal account that you're using hits $750,000, and then PayPal gets suspicious and freezes it. Also, I will say, it is kind of funny to me that I got so much shit for using PayPal as a banking service, like one of my banking services for a while, when that's literally what Notch did. What Notch did, and where all of the sales for Minecraft's proceeds went to when Notch released Minecraft. That's actually really funny. I didn't even know that. I knew about like his PayPal freezing, but I didn't even make the connection. Like, wait a minute. Notch was receiving all the payment for the copies of Minecraft that we're selling to his PayPal account. I don't know why, but that just sounds so funny to me. Like, another sale, another sale, another sale. Another sale. Oh, someone else just bought the game. Just like refreshing his PayPal account to watch as like the game sales go in. Like, that's wild to me, dude. Why did people get on you for that? Doesn't make any sense. It was part of like a misrepresentation from the DJ Mule video. Basically, in the video, DJ Mule, if I recall correctly, claimed that I just used PayPal as my only banking service, which is really bizarre because it's just not true. I have a proper bank account. That's how I get paid by YouTube, because you have to have a routing number with like direct deposit and everything. As far as I know, you can't get YouTube to like pay your ad revenue to your PayPal. I've tried. So it was just like a weird conspiracy that came from DJ Mule, but got passed around by DGGers a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
was literally keeping hundreds of thousands in his PayPal. Although Notch was on top of his game, he didn't seem to be on top of his fame. There were some things that he just could not do on his own. Enter stage right, Valve, the video game's mammoth headed by another popular figure, Gabe Newell. Noticing the success of
Yeah, for those of you guys that don't know, just because DJ Mule got blown the fuck out in his video on me doesn't mean that lies he spread about me didn't end up, like, spreading. DJ Mule didn't just lie about me, like, in the accusations he made about me in his video. He lied about me in a lot of the info he gave to the audience to try to set up, like, certain stories. Like, when he told certain stories, he told them incorrectly. And so the claims that he made there, even from people who, like, didn't like DJ Mule or agree with his video, those, like, misrepresentations were still believed because they had no reason to, like, suspect DJ Mule's setup for the accusations. They just suspected DJ Mule's accusations. So, like, a good example of this is there were a bunch of people who kept on thinking I still lived in Florida. Because DJ Mule in his videos said that after breaking up with Lonnie, I moved back in with my mom in Florida. And even though I'd said dozens of times on stream, no, my mom moved to California. I'm still in California. I'm in Palm Springs. People just kept on believing it because they heard it from the DJ Mule video. But because it wasn't an accusation, they didn't, you know, think about it or consider if it was a lie or not. So yeah, it's just one of those things.
Minecraft and the man behind it, they invited him over to Bellevue, Washington to see what the prospects of future work could be. They showed him around the headquarters, made him take some programming assessments, even having him meet with President Mr. Newell himself. All in all, it was quite the experience. And although they believed he had a bit to learn, they were happy to offer him a job that would hopefully provide him with a bit of stability. However, that wasn't the only thing that happened in Bellevue.
There's not.
Minecon 2010.
And here's the crowd.
Minecon 2010 was literally just a bunch of people meeting Notch at like a get-together in person. I believe it was the next Minecon, either Minecon 2011 or Minecon 2012 that was in Vegas, and that's the one where the drama happened. I assume people were saying that TRO gets into it, but yeah, that's when the Yogscast swearing drama happened, and Notch did not come out of that looking good in my opinion.
Notch announced he was traveling to Valve headquarters in the US. Many people asked him if a meetup was possible. Person, thinking it could be a nice initiative, decided to announce the meeting on his Tumblr blog, jovially labeling it MinecraftCon, stating that it could be a good idea, even if it's just 3 people sitting around in uncomfortable silence for 20 minutes. It wasn't quite that though. In fact, over 50 people turned up, including one person in a full creeper costume. Although it didn't last for more than a few hours, it might just have been enough to convince Notch that although Valve's offer was likely flattering, there may be something more worthwhile in what he already had. So he turned down the move to Valve and instead called up his longtime friend Jakub Pursa, expressing the desire to take this whole little Minecraft gig a little bit more seriously. But was that what Notch wanted? Upon returning to Sweden, Persson and Pulsar incorporated their business as Mojang AB, later to be Mojang Studios, and brought on some additional manpower to their workforce. They decided to commit a bit more time to game development in general, even beginning to work on another game called Scrolls, though
This was when Mojang really started to blow up. I remember, like, seeing the Minecraft launcher page update, because, like, I'm really digging deep for, like, memories here, because, like, these are things that I never thought to try to, like, commit to memory as a kid, but I saw this a lot, so, like, I kind of remember it. Minecraft's initial launch page, when I was a kid, when I first started playing it, was this ugly, basic, like, white little background and a button that you would press, and there was, like, a little bit of, like, art to it, but it was very basic. It was a very basic launcher. It was a white background. It had a little Java symbol on it, or like a little Mojang symbol, if I remember correctly. And it was just it was very ugly looking. Like, you had to be, like, a little bit familiar with computers to even, like, understand that this is a game launcher. And then they updated it so that it had, like, the dirt Minecraft background, and you had to, like, log in with your username and password. That's right. Back in the day, you typed in your Minecraft username and then password. So people would try to hack popular YouTubers' accounts by just putting in their username and then trying different passwords, because that's all you had to do. It wasn't until later on that they made it so you had to use your email, and I remember being really confused by that change, because it just happened one day. I just tried to get on Minecraft, and it kept saying my username was wrong, because it kept saying username, but I didn't understand it wanted my email, and that was the day I realized that, like, oh, looks like things are asking for emails instead of usernames now when you log in. But yeah, I remember that change. And then they changed the launcher like a dozen other times, and I hated it every time they changed it. But now it's completely unrecognizable from what it used to be.
It's now known as Caller's Bane. It seems the wheels were firmly in motion on the Mojang machine, and not too soon after, Notch was vindicated for his decision made in September, because Minecraft's growth didn't slow. In fact, it did quite the opposite, even beginning to capture the attention of mainstream media sources. Less than 20 days after his visit to Bellevue, a YouTube video on Minecraft topped the platform's gaming charts for the first.
Bro, you guys don't even know how big the video was where they built the giant Star Trek Enterprise. This video was the Minecraft video back then. When you searched Minecraft, no matter what, like 3 or 4 videos down, this video would be there. This thumbnail, this image in the thumbnail of like the half-built, like partially built Star Trek Enterprise. This was the Minecraft video for so long on YouTube.
First time, and by the end of October they had moved 500,000 copies, and by the end of the year, PC Gamer UK had heralded it as the game of the year, all while still in beta. In many ways, the offer from Valve is just what someone like Notch needed. This was a dude who had seemed to have been out of his depth at the time. Hell, he was storing hundreds of thousands of pounds in his PayPal account. It felt like the backing of a more stable source of income was just what he needed. However, something tells me Notch didn't bank his...
Did PayPal not let you connect your bank and transfer money back then? Like, surely he could have connected his proper bank account if he had one and just transfer the money over. It just takes 3 to 5 business days before you can use it, so you just want to do it in chunks. You know? Like, I feel like he could have done that if that was a thing back then.
His success on the amount of income his little project generated. Nobody could have foreseen the success of a humble game initially posted onto an independent forum, especially Person, and really his ability to follow this through wouldn't depend on the amount of money he made, but more his own spark for the game, something that he clearly still believed he possessed.
Does it work? Does it just still make you happy to just keep working on the game every day?
Yeah, so far it is. We got another game.
Nice.
A big prototype, and it's really fun to think about that. But so far, the most fun is when I can actually just work on Minecraft.
With the attention of major developers like Valve, it would have been very easy to let his elevated status get to him. But like a lot of accidental celebrities, Notch didn't really seem to view himself as one. He just wanted to keep working on his project. But that was at least somewhat difficult as the user base continued to manifest. He didn't make the game early access to the entire world with the intent of having the entire world play it. He had to adapt, and the new business model seemed like the best way forward. With a new business, there are new responsibilities, particularly if a game wants to continue to rule the market. In 2011, to consolidate their prosperity, the Mojang crew began to work on new versions for other platforms, initially for mobile devices, but console projects followed not too long after. The company also made the decision to start publishing games from other indie studios. Additionally, after the success of the spontaneous meetup in 2010, it was decided that Minecon would become an official event. It was planned to occur from the 18th to the 19th of October in Las Vegas. Everything was moving forward pretty smoothly.
This is the
Was
one.
that the case for our title character? Notch really was the first of his kind in many ways, and he was certainly one of the first who became known among many for just being a developer. Although that was partly attributable to the success of the game, it was also credit to his hands-on nature.
By the way, the reason why I kept emphasizing Notch hosted the first Minecon in Las Vegas and was mad about the Yogscast swearing in front of kids is because not only has the Yogscast always, like, sweared in their videos to some extent, like, they've never been a completely clean, family-friendly channel. They were never known as that. Like in the Minecraft community, they were just kind of doing their thing, and they didn't necessarily swear or like get very raunchy often, but like they wouldn't not, like they weren't like opposed to it. It just wasn't common. And so like it was really bizarre that Notch had the gall to like host all of this in fucking the City of Sinners, and then get mad at these YouTubers for swearing and doing their show just as they would any other time when invited to do exactly that at Minecon in fucking Las Vegas, the City of Sinners.
A natural interest in the community that surrounded it. It was clear that he didn't wish to take any single person for granted. However, there's a reason that sort of approach isn't typically linked to celebrities. To put it plainly, it's impossible to maintain. I'd say the best allegory is that of the YouTube channel, really. There are people who, when they start their channel, will respond to every single comment and try and give as much attention to anybody who takes an interest in their work. But the attention may grow to the point where you cannot tangibly engage with everyone without sacrificing other aspects of the creative process. What people loved Notch for was a quality that would inevitably become incompatible with his status, and with that comes a few complications. When you have a small project, the first people who believe in it and support it are some of the most important supporters you can have, as they're the ones who may help you find your feet and momentum. If you reciprocate that positive attention, then these people will enjoy engaging with you because many of them appreciate being listened to, and their voice actually.
You can tell what he's about to get into now. He's about to start talking about when Notch began to become a cunt. Because early on, like, Notch was such a nice, approachable-looking guy by the looks of things. Like, you wouldn't really... Like, you wouldn't get... Like, my mom always thought Notch was skeevy-looking when she saw pictures of him. I remember that. But, like, he was an approachable, like, jolly-looking guy. He had, like, a Santa Claus type, you know, sort of vibe to him. But this is where he started to get his bitter, crotchety old man reputation, where it started to form, where people started to realize, guys, I think Notch is starting to kind of, like, hate Minecraft. So, yeah.
Having influence. As a project grows, their voice will be diluted though, and this leads to more dissatisfaction, the allegations that you sold out, that you're not who you used to be, you become lazy, etc. and you're going to come across people with completely conflicting visions of what you should do with your content, which often just leads to nobody being satisfied. Some of these dedicated individuals were also becoming increasingly obsessed with Notch's life, including to the point where someone created a timeline of his in-work absences. Even if he tried his utmost hardest, there was no way that Notch's position was sustainable, and over 2011, as pressure continued to rise, it was clear that he was, as they would say, suffering from success. In a Reddit AMA in April 2011, Notch acknowledges his nature to overstress and focus on the negativity, particularly over a runaway success like Minecraft. However, also says he has made a commitment to managing it better. He seemed to be doing an okay job at managing that at first, but over the year this struggle appeared to resurface. This likely wasn't alleviated when Bethesda filed a lawsuit claiming the game Scrolls was too similar to the
Yeah. Okay, so I remember this happening, but I was given misinformation about the details when I was a kid. So I was in middle school, and me and my friends were talking about like this, because, you know, Notch was getting sued and Minecraft was getting sued, like it was a big deal. So me and my friends were talking about it, and it was Bethesda that was suing them, but the story that I heard was that Bethesda was suing Notch because Minecraft was too similar to Skyrim, because they added the Ender Dragon fight. That was the story that went around my school, was that Notch was getting sued because the Ender Dragon fight was too similar to the dragons in Skyrim. Yeah, same? Wait, did anybody else hear that too? That was literally it? Did anybody else hear that false story too as a kid? It makes no sense looking back, like, in hindsight as an adult, but that's the story that was going around when I was a kid. That's what I believed. Yeah.
Elder Scrolls, which led to a month-long legal back and forth. Notch prevailed, but at what cost? This seemed to climax in the 2011 Minecon, which also marked the official release of Minecraft. There was every reason to celebrate.
Here it comes.
However, it was marked by an incident involving a couple YouTubers, part of the channel known as the Yogscast.
I guess it's fixed now. I don't know.
There it is.
We're finally gonna go through it.
I'm excited, Simon.
Oh my god. I'm terrified.
This is my
But we
childhood,
got
chat.
backup. There's 4 of us now.
This is my childhood.
In that time, the Yogscast were one of the largest and most influential gaming channels on YouTube. Some of their members were also enthusiastic devotees of Minecraft, and Notch in return sang his praises for their work. So their appearance at Minecon 2011 should have been a match made in heaven. However, not too long after their appearance on the final night, a sleep-deprived Notch sent a series of enraged tweets that called out the pair for their supposed delinquent behavior, which included cursing, insulting, and all-around incendiary behavior. Yogscast responded on their subreddit, disputing Notch's version of events and criticizing the general organization of Minecon. This tension persisted for a day or so before Notch relented and put out another statement apologizing for his approach and admitting it was likely a stress-related misunderstanding.
Basically, Notch just decided to erupt and be a dickhead that day, and then ended up walking it all back after the Yogscast were forced to make a massive post on Reddit, like, explaining everything that happened and debunking the lies that Notch had pushed about them. Like, it was pretty fucked up.
At the height of his success, Notch should have at least been enjoying himself, yet it seemed that it was anything but that, and it's not surprising. He was never a person who enjoyed the public spotlight, and this increased level of attention, especially at an event like Minecon, was only going to end.
Did TRO do his homework well so far? Dude, I'm learning new things in this video, and that's very unusual for me and, like, any video about Minecraft. Like, I thought I knew pretty much all this history, but there's some stuff here that I didn't even know early on in the video. That's very impressive. That's very impressive.
Escalate that further. The guy needed a break, but would he ever get it?
This is when Jeb took over.
What about the gaming world? Because every time I look at it, like, I looked you up on the internet and stuff, and it seems like there's quite a lot of bitchiness in your world. Like, quite a lot of people are like, I hate him, he created Minecraft, how dare he not be me? You know, that kind of thing. Is it a very bitchy world, you think?
As noted, Notch's approach to management wasn't really one that adapted to the levels of attention that he received. He didn't do it badly for what it was worth, but eventually you can't keep up with the continued public analysis of your existence, particularly when it's committed to a game that should really enable you to block out the world around you. So approximately a couple weeks after the official launch of Minecraft and Notch's little incident with the Yogscast, he announced he was stepping down as head programmer. The title of the post is in Swedish,
Jeb took over before this? Yeah, I thought so too. This feels too late for... Like, I feel like maybe Jeb hadn't taken over. I think Jeb was just part of the development. Because there was a time where, like, Jeb and Notch were working essentially as partners. Like, Walt and Jesse Pinkman, pretty much. Like, they were seen as, like, working, you know, equally on the game. So this might just be when the torch was handed off.
Statement, meaning with those words I hand over the microphone,
officially,
with the rest of the short blog elaborating on a statement. The new head designer, Jens Bergensten, also known as Jeb, had been working hard on developing the game Scrolls. Person was impressed.
He was head designer at Mojang, but I guess he was working more on Scrolls at the time and not Minecraft. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that I didn't even know that Jeb even worked on Scrolls at all. I guess it makes sense because their team was so small they would have had to.
By his work and felt like he was the right person to take the game forward. He doesn't really talk too much about his own mental state, only saying that he will rest for a while, but intends to continue to help out Minecraft. With all things considered, this was probably the right decision. It would ease the public expectation while still allowing him to offer insight and ideas for his brainchild. Bergensten is by no means anonymous, and I don't want to suggest that, but Notch was still the face of the company in many regards, just one that had been stretched a bit too thin over the past few years. But would that be enough? Well, I think the key is perspective, really. The move as it had been presented was one for person's own well-being. However, I think that Notch had to believe it himself, because whether he liked it or not, people still primarily associated Minecraft with him above anything else. And with that in mind, there were still going to be people who held him responsible for the upkeep of the game, even if it wasn't technically his obligation at all. Notch had to simply accept that these people would exist and stop caring about them. I think one of the problems with Notch is that he couldn't really escape his status. I think the move lifted some mandate to do work off his shoulders, but otherwise he was still the center of attention, particularly as an avid Twitter user. He also wasn't really much of a professional when it came to his content. This wasn't an insult really, but as you know, many companies make their public representation as bereft in personality as possible. Notch always presented himself as a friend of the user. Unlike a lot of large companies, his stance on piracy was mostly different, occasionally even encouraging people. He resented large companies for their acquisitions, such as Google taking over YouTube. He came across as a video game populist. But I think having such stances is always going to come with...
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to describe it. That's a really good way to describe it. Notch, even before he got his reputation as like an kind of an asshole, Notch was known as kind of a hard ass when it came to like the gaming industry. He was known for having very strong opinions, being very opinionated, and getting sometimes like pretty passionate about them in some of the blog posts he would write. He could be pretty dicky even before he started to be known as a dick. A literal sentient dick.
With his perils. Notch was still a significant force in a lot of decisions made around Mojang. Sure, he wasn't the #1 guy for design, but as I'm sure he found out soon enough, running a company came with more than enough baggage of its own. And eventually, although you can find his position as an advocate for consumers respectable, you soon realize why a lot of companies don't have that sort of representation. Ultimately, Notch still bore the brunt of the decisions made by the company, even ones not made by himself. So he was regularly bombarded with requests that he could not fulfill without going over Jeb's head, something that he had pledged not to do. However, if he didn't enact those changes, he'd be subject to a litany of rather unpleasant words, something that he took more personally than he should have. He was an inherently high-stress person who wanted to solve every person's issue but knew he shouldn't. Being the video game populist isn't easy when he was no longer the friendly game developer behind the screen and had a multi-million-dollar franchise to oversee. In the end, Notch became much more preoccupied with covering the decisions that concerned business, sometimes dealing with complaints from large companies who weren't happy that people were recreating their content in Minecraft. On the other side, people were dissatisfied
not Mojang. Who's dealing with that right now? Epic Games is dealing with that right now with their new Fortnite update. Epic Games released a new Fortnite update to their creative mode, and it's insane, dude. If you haven't seen this yet and you're like into game development, you should really check it out. Whether or not you like Fortnite, it's a very, very cool thing they've done. It's almost like, it's kind of like Hytale. Like, basically, Fortnite's new Creative 2.0 update is what Hytale is. Like, for all intents and purposes. But Hytale, obviously, is going to have a lot more to it. But, like, as it's like a whole game, but like essentially what Fortnite Creative 2.0 does, this whole like new game engine, game maker thing built into Fortnite, it's really cool looking, really neat. But they're dealing with that right now because people have been making maps on that Fortnite Creative Mode thing that are like Rust from Call of Duty and stuff. And so right now, the like Epic Games is getting sued for those maps that are being made by fans, which is like, that's such bullshit that like a company can get sued because fans, or even fans can get sued for recreating a map from another game in another game. Like, what? Like, how is that? That like that's a level of just shameless that is beyond the pale in my mind. DMCA says they can't. It could be a slap suit. We'll see. It could just be a very blatant, like, you know, not viable lawsuit that they're just doing to try to shut it down, but we'll see. Epic Games is a big company.
Every time he made an executive decision that people felt may have affected a player's in-game experience, even if it was one he felt was the right thing to do or absolutely necessary. The sandbox format, which in many ways was the game's core appeal, also began to generate some controversy of its own over the years. Now, in many ways, what happens in a game like Minecraft is a player's own discretion, and developers can't be expected to intervene in every server that offends people's sensibilities, particularly on a game with the number of servers.
Thank God, too, right? Thank God, right, too? Because, like, one of the worst, like, one of my biggest nightmares is that, like, Mojang is going to come under fire for 2B2T. Like, 2B2T is just, if I'm being completely honest, it probably shouldn't exist. like, morally speaking, I feel like its existence is a negative, but it's just so fucking cool and fun. It's basically Minecraft 4chan, but, like, frankly, a lot less bigoted than 4chan, to be fair. Like, to be fair, like, 2B2T is not as crazy, like, far-right Nazi-infested as it's made out to be, but it's still pretty bad. But, like, I would be so upset if 2B2T got fucked over by Mojang needing to, like, sanitize their image because, like, some journalist makes an article about 2B2T and it's like, oh, here, really quick. Whoa, rat. Apparently we got rats that'll attack us here. I'm going to bring up the chords really fast. Write these chords down. Let me make the chat go away first. -8 and 8. Wow, it's literally just 8 and 8. Okay, that's pretty easy. It's literally right next to 0, 0. We actually don't even need to remember those chords.
That Minecraft has. However, as the antics became more and more far-fetched, pressure began to mount, ultimately climaxing in a situation regarding in-game transactions. It was mid-2014. Summer was approaching quickly, but it was not...
Okay, let me see if I remember this well enough. I'm testing my Minecraft knowledge with you guys here. If I remember correctly, essentially what had happened here was there were servers, just people's servers, big popular servers like Hypixel, Mineplex, etc. that were basically having they were charging people for like you could vote, or you could be charged for certain ranks, which would give you certain gear and cosmetics, and there were basically certain items you could pay for on servers. Some servers were pay to win, and some servers were like just straight up, you know, just pay to get like cool cosmetics and whatnot, you know? And your opinion on this may vary, obviously. There's a lot of contradictory opinion, or not contradictory, there's a lot of different opinions people have on this type of server, but like, a lot of these servers required this method of payment to stay up. Shit. Okay, we need to get up there fast. So when these servers suddenly, like, had the EULA changes, like, the rug was pulled out from under them, and they were no longer able to make money in the same way that they were used to, which was really fucking bad for these channels. Or for not these channels, these servers. Hypixel was one of them. The conception of the development of Hytale started because of this change. Because, you know, they were a very big server at the time, but then, like, they started to realize we're playing in someone else's sandbox. Like, they realized there were a bunch of kids playing in someone else's sandbox, and as fun as it is to have this game that exists that you can run a server for and it's, you know, super successful, you know, you're not the one making the rules for the fundamentals of this game. You still got to work around someone else's game. So they're like, fuck it, let's make our own game. And that's where the development of Hytale started.
All sunshine on the Minecraft servers. Discourse had flared up on Twitter, as it always does, on the issue of donating to servers that offer certain services. Responding to this, Mojang spokesperson Owen Hill explained that although people are more than welcome to donate to servers, it couldn't be in exchange for equipment that gave you an in-game advantage.
There
Soft
it is,
pay to win, essentially. However, many users didn't agree with this and began a hashtag titled Save Minecraft. Although this stance was not new for Mojang, they were not known to have enforced it, and this newfound attention drew ire from many users who felt there were many good servers whose existence relied on such transactions. Notch, frustrated by the decision surrounding the topic, did what he did best, and took to his personal blog to write a response explaining his perspective, and explained that nothing had changed. This had always been their stance on the matter, as written in the EULA, the End User License Agreement. They did not want to sacrifice the don't pay for the gameplay principle that had motivated them all this time. Nevertheless, the user base did not subside, some of whom pointing towards the recent Minecraft Realms release as being a motivating factor for Mojang's decision to turn their attention towards other paid servers. Realms was launched the month before and allowed a person to pay £8 a month to have private servers for up to 20 friends. This large-scale service drew comparisons that maybe Minecraft was trying to decrease competition, not truly acting in the interest of users, which likely provoked a more cynical response from gamers. Notch, from his perspective, clearly felt like he was doing the right thing, and he always took a lot of pride in it. He was always facing off with the sect of people who believed he was acting in his own self-interest, and with the large-scale movement against the decision that he felt was pretty cut and dry was the final straw. So on the 16th of June, a frustrated and enraged Notch typed out a tweet in the heat of the moment.
A frustrated and enraged
changed.
Notch tweeted. Uh-oh. Oh no. I remember. I think I know what he did here. I think I know what happened. It's when he announced that he was looking to to sell Minecraft. Because it didn't... Like, he'd already been in conversations with Microsoft, from what I remember. But I think this was when he was just like, yo, I'm looking to sell Minecraft. Anyone want to buy it? Who's selling? Who's buying? I'm selling. Who's buying? And then a bunch of people were like, yeah. And then it ended up going to Microsoft. Okay, how do I get down to that without dying? Shit. Oh, I've got no portals in the Nether, so I can... Oh. Boom. All right. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. There we go. Get me the fuck out of here before that gas blows up the portal. Why didn't I think to do that sooner?
Anyone want to buy my share of Mojang so I can move on with my life? Getting hate
There
for
it
trying
is,
to
yeah.
do the right thing is not my gig. The tweet in question wasn't a serious business proposition, but it did catch the attention of a few serious businesses who contacted Notch's colleagues and asked him if he was for real. At first unsure, the idea of being able to completely disassociate from all the burdens he felt saddled with began to inspire some ideas. Every major company knew the cash cow that Mojang was, a business with less than 50 employees, yet generating hundreds of millions in revenue each year. It was a corporate wet dream, and if they were going to sell, there was hardly a gaming behemoth that didn't want a slice. However, it didn't take too long for the frontrunner to emerge. That frontrunner was the humble, small-scale firm known as Microsoft.
So how do you run your Minecraft company? Have you sold out to the evil corporations yet?
No, not yet. We hope not to.
Now, to be fair, the company had to be somewhat large to even afford to buy out the shares on offer. We'll get to the price of the deal in a bit, but Notch wanted a company who were in touch with the preservation of what made Minecraft special. He had dealt with Microsoft before, occasionally expressing frustration with their practices, but regularly also demonstrating affection for those who he worked with to bring Minecraft to their platform, even at some points promoting rumors of an exclusivity deal, which he seems to sarcastically refer to. All I can affirmatively say is they were probably a better choice to Notch than EA. With this in mind, Microsoft moved in to close the deal. They had the additional motive of the ever-wholesome subject of tax avoidance. Due to our functioning economic system, a deal with Mojang would facilitate. You love to see it. So they were prepared to offer the...
This house has been destroyed and rebuilt so many times. It's not even funny at this point how many times this house has been destroyed and rebuilt. Back to it.
Big bucks. And when I say big, I mean hard to even quantify. Person's shares totaled just shy of $1.8 billion. Poe says, around 300 million, and then CEO Carl Mannes shares 100 million. Not your average shopping bill, to say the least.
Damn.
This is all finalized and officially announced on the 15th of September 2014, with a post on Notch's Tumblr titled "I'm Leaving Mojang," which goes more into depth about how interactions with his user base had shaped.
You guys have no fucking idea how insane everyone was after this happened. Everyone was, like, convinced this was the end of Minecraft. Minecraft is over. Like, Microsoft owning it now is the end of it. Okay, I gotta kill this kid. Where is he? These kids are so annoying. Where is he? Where is he? You're about to die. We're gonna kill you. Oh my god, he fights back. I forgot.
Not nice to me.
Yeah, he'll never fuck off. I hate those kids. They gotta kill him.
Shaped his current perspective. He already knew he would never be able to recreate a success like Minecraft, but wanted to stay on as the figurehead because he believed there was some symbolic value to that. However, he came to the conclusion that he didn't enjoy it. He was just really this space on a game that he didn't really feel attached to anymore, a source of people's enjoyment and pain that he didn't understand. In his words, he's merely a nerdy computer programmer who likes to have opinions on Twitter. Although the money was nothing to
The foreshadowing, dude. Who likes to have opinions on Twitter is such foreshadowing. Any person you see who prides themselves on having, like, brave, controversial opinions that they refuse to keep to themselves, you just know right away they're, like, a massive cunt. Because they just take pride on, like, being a contrarian who upsets people. There's nothing wrong with necessarily being a contrarian if the things you're a contrarian about lead you to correct takes, but, like, if you're doing it just to upset people and be for the sake of controversial, you know, like, controversial perception, then you're kind of a nerdy cuck, in my opinion.
Turn your nose at, he stresses that it wasn't about the money, it was about the sanity. I wonder how people would respond to that. Well, most of them took it pretty well, actually. There were a few people who regarded him as a sellout, but he'd been called a sellout by plenty of people in his time, and that wasn't anything new. It was obviously difficult for some people to rationalize given that the person had always been outspoken about a lot of the threatening overreach of big tech. But his move wasn't really one for any of the companies. It wasn't an endorsement of such, it was just what he thought was best for himself. He had to get out, and that was his way. Among other people affected by this were the members of staff. Upon learning on his departure, they were reported to be disappointed. And that makes sense, especially given they were now under the gaze of a much more cutthroat company. But Notch had taken steps to ensure that no layoffs would occur, which given the modest numbers of Mojang's work.
That's nice to hear. I feel like that makes sense. I feel like Notch would have been like, hey, don't fuck up what I had going on here and, like, I don't know, like, fire a shit ton of my employees. Like, I hired them, they know the game, they've worked hard, don't just lay them off. Like, that might have been a part of the deal for the sale, that they continue to work there for a certain amount of time or something. I feel like that wouldn't be unheard of in the business, or in, like, this kind of industry, when handing off something like this. Where's the flint and steel? Let's do it outside, and hopefully this will keep the fire from spreading. Okay. I hope I don't light the fences.
Workforce, Microsoft were happy to abide by. All staff members who remained at the company for the next 6 months also received a $300,000 bonus from Notch's share, which obviously wasn't anything near the levels of money Marcus had been paid, but it wasn't derisory either. It was generally reported that Microsoft mostly took a hands-off approach and merely offered their resources and investment to the team over at Mojang in exchange for the profits they were making. Overall, it was considered by most to be an example of a transaction done right, one that didn't lead to the immediate demise of a product or those who worked tirelessly on it. At the same time, although you'd be hard-pressed not to understand Person's viewpoint, it's hard not to feel a bit solemn about the circumstances that precipitated it. Although Person's tenure probably did centralize his status a bit too much, I mean hell, he once placed above Barack Obama in a Time Person of the Year poll. His success was done in—
I remember that! I remember that, dude! Holy shit! Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, he ranked above Obama in Time's Person of the Year that year, because he was, like, the Time Person of the Year thing isn't based on, like, who is a good person that we should be awarding, like, some kind of, like, prize to. That's not what it's based on. It's, like, who was a very influential person that did like something, had a lot of people talking about them. Like Elon Musk will probably end up being Time Person of the Year this year or something, or next year, or the year before. I don't even know. Like it's just people who are really relevant and talked about generally. Okay, how do I make these again? Just, oh, that makes 8 of them? Aw, shit. Poggers. Okay, so gears, iron, and those. Okay, but I need to make, hold on.
Inspiration to many, he'd become representative of an individual creative using the online world to make something greater than any major studio could ever concoct. And his concern for personally involving himself in creating a consumer-based experience felt refreshing for many who played the game. It created a community with an identifier.
Like, it felt so different from other companies that even make games. It felt more like a family of people were making the game, like a group of friends were making the game even, than like a company. Does that make sense? It had a very special vibe to it. The entire, like, community and studio behind Minecraft's creation. It felt very special and just cozy and welcoming and accepting and all that.
Viable figure at the center of it. His departure didn't mean the game was suddenly going to take a nosedive, and in a way, some people's fallacious belief that he was one of the key factors in maintaining the game's appeal was disproven after he left. But it did reduce the power of the community on a large company who isn't really known for their consumer empowerment. Eventually, those aspects of corporatism were going to seep in, and there'd be nothing that anyone could do about it. Sometimes it's nice just to have someone there to listen. Ultimately, this was all rooted in a situation, though, where the person who listened had heard enough. Anyone who cares that much about a game is not going to be able to withstand the pressure of maintaining it. Minecraft was one person's passion that became so much greater than that. In Notch's statement, he writes, "If I ever accidentally make something that seems to gain traction, I'll probably abandon it immediately." Some people may have been able to...
Like, I wonder sometimes if Notch was just kind of like maybe a little bit of a dick when he first made Minecraft, but overall a chill dude. But like fame went to his head, money went to his head, his divorce ruined his like mental health and personality. And what was there for him when he was just sitting alone in his giant fucking mansion on his computer? What was there for him when he went online? It would have been Nazis and conservatives and the far right. They would have been there for him.
Navigate the tricky social environment better, but Notch was not that person. He never was. That's what made him popular. That's what made him liked. He was the everyman. He was the underdog who rose up to change the gaming industry. He didn't have politically adept social skills or a decade-long college education. He was a guy who just did what he felt like doing. He was an outsider. He showed that the stereotype of the nerd staying in his room on his computer wasn't as negative as some thought it to be. In the end, the popularity made his status untenable, though. He couldn't be everybody's everyman, but he still walked away from a game that would revere him as one of the greatest examples of independent enterprise in modern history. Well, he could have.
Here's where I'm guessing the real shit begins. We're not very far into this, Jesus. I'm gonna run and grab my vape that's on the charger.
And everyone knew it. It's hard not to let success change you in some way, and often you should change with success because it typically places you in a different position than one you were in previously. Even if you didn't intend on becoming famous, if you're going to continue operating in that domain, you have to adapt. While he was working on Minecraft, Notch seemed hesitant to do that. In 2011, he made over $100 million, and his response to questions on how he was going to spend it was perhaps obtaining a driver's license and a car. Almost comedically modest. When he did splash out, it was only really with other people, such as work trips and conventions. He obviously cared less about his shopping bill than most, but he never seemed to let that wealth distract him from the lifestyle that he was accustomed to. However, the sale of his shares in Minecraft changed that, not just because it earned him an obscene amount of money at once, but because it removed a commitment that he had felt attached to for years.
He could let the mask come off and it wouldn't affect him in any way. No matter what he said or did, no one could take away his massive wealth.
As long as he was tied to that game, no matter how much money he made, Notch seemed almost paranoid that it could still collapse at any moment. He waited over a year to fully quit his job, despite the fact that Minecraft was generating far more income. Even when success seemed near guaranteed, Notch felt the reputation of a game weighing on his actions. That was gone now, and he had all the time to do what he wanted to. Well, what would he do? He decided to treat himself, it seems. First on his list of goodies was a new abode. Person went for the ever-popular celebrity location in Beverly Hills, spending $70 million and outbidding Jay-Z and Beyonce on a 23,000 square foot mansion with...
That's when people really started to realize, wait, hold on a minute. This whole gaming thing is like a massive industry? It was big.
...his own car lift. How quaint. It was soon...
But yeah, this was like when people started to realize that gaming was a massive industry, that there's a lot of money in it. I think the gaming industry is like one of the largest industries in the world right now. Like of all the industries that exist on Earth right now, gaming is the biggest. Anyway,
reported that he had been spending his nights in Las Vegas blowing upwards of $100K in a single outing to the nightclubs, casinos, and the rest. In interviews...
Bro, I know you got a couple billion in your pocket, but like... If you're spending $100K in a night, you can burn through a couple billion fast. Like fast, you can burn through 2 billion spending $100K a night. Like, that's a lot of money to just air. And he's already bought a massive multi-$100 million mansion, and now he's dropping hundreds of thousands a night. Oh, I see a poopy. I see it. Did it come from the Kelbasa? Did Kelbasa poop that out? That's so weird.
His mantra appeared that he was making up for lost time and everything he was never able to do as a young adult working his ass off in the industry. He acknowledged that it wasn't the wisest way to spend one's fortunes, but it was for him. He was living the high life, that much is true. Private rooftop pools, Cristal champagne, and Skrillex. The ultimate triad. This was all shared through his Twitter and Instagram, which now served a very different purpose for Notch, and his attitude certainly reflected that. When people tried to dunk on him, he'd regularly respond with memes and light-hearted jibes to show that ultimately, whatever people said wouldn't change where he was at.
Did you guys see on his birthday, Simon from the Yogscast, quote tweeted Notch after, like, one of Notch's transphobic tweets saying, "For my birthday, I'd like you to shut the fuck up." Based Simon Yogscast.
With life. In spite of all this, he had pledged to donate a fair sum of his money to charity and set some aside for family. But life is more than what you want to do with money. What other plans did he have? Well, it appeared uncertain.
Yo! It's JXE. Good to see you. If you have 2 billion, you can spend 100K every night for decades, man. I mean, every night? And yeah, that's decades, but like, I mean, you're hoping to have like a lot of money in savings as you like get older, and he's already spent hundreds of millions on the house. He's already spent tons on the parties because he would throw these massive ragers at that house and invite YouTubers there. You probably know a couple of YouTubers who've been to Notch's house, Jay. And like, I don't know. I feel like Notch probably, he admitted he wasn't very responsible with his money, but God, like, if I got $2 billion, I wouldn't be spending 100K in a night on like just fucking around, you know? Like, I know he's settled, he's got a house, his housing is taken care of and everything, but God, that just seems wasteful. I feel like, I don't know. Regardless, though, like, this video, we're only a third of the way through, I would say, and this video is the most well-researched video about Minecraft's existence. Guys, I was there. I was there when the old magic was written, okay? You guys have seen as I paused and I've told you guys stories about my experience behind all the things and the events he's bringing up here. I was there for all of this shit, okay? And there's a few things that he's included in this video that were surprises to me. I didn't know a lot of shit in this video. I didn't know that he'd worked for King, the company that made Candy Crush before he even started anything else. Like, most of the videos you see that tell these stories start with him making Ruby Dung. And that was his first game, and that's where it starts. He'd worked on, like, multiple games prior to that. He worked on a fucking MMO prior to that. I didn't even know this. And that MMO was a lot like Minecraft. So there's like another pre-Minecraft Notch made Minecraft-like out there that I didn't even know the existence of before this video. Look, if I had 2 billion, I'd want to spend at least one night spending an obscene amount of just fuck around. Okay, one night's one thing, but like if you're doing it every night as a habit, it'd probably be pretty unhealthy. But I mean, it is his money. He can do with what he wants with it. But I would want to turn the 2 billion into more, you know? Like I feel like I'd devote like half of it to stuff that I can spend and the other half would go to investing. You know? At least he's paying taxes. Oh, and he's paying a lot of taxes living in California. I tell you what. In LA, too. He's living in the Hollywood Hills. That motherfucker is paying some serious taxes.
Of March 2015, an interview was published with Forbes that delved into the headspace of Notch following the sale. It reported that he had since started a new company known as Rubber Brain, located in central Stockholm.
I didn't know that. He has another company now? I know that he was working on another game that was like this weird, bizarre, like it's like a goat or a horse is like running around in a bizarre physicsed environment in the middle of nowhere in this very like empty, vast, liminal environment. Fuck. God, I didn't know this. Dude, the right opinion really knows how to do his research. This motherfucker does more research on his videos than any other Minecraft YouTuber I've watched make a video about this guy. Like, regardless of how big they are, this is the most well-researched one I've found. And it just came out 5 hours ago. This is the best one. The right opinion is definitely popping off.
Him and his colleagues have been throwing around some new ideas and occasionally testing them, but mostly just trying to have a good time. Whatever their
Yeah, he does better research than a lot of bread tubers. You're not wrong, Heavy Gretel. You're not wrong.
plans were, it wasn't to create a new blockbuster. On the question of his place in the current gaming environment, he didn't really know where he wanted to be. But one thing was certain, that he hadn't regretted selling his shares. He just wanted to pass away the days having a good time with his friends. But
dude, like I mentioned before, when Notch first bought that house, he had a reputation for throwing these enormous rager parties. Like, big fucking parties. And from what I've heard, like, Notch's mansion is like a labyrinth. It's labyrinthian in layout. Like, you can get lost in it. He has, like, catering. Like, he has an entire, like, candy bar that is catered by a candy company that comes out to refill it. So, like, he can eat candy from it. He can have people over to eat candy from it when he's having a party. It gets restocked and catered by some fucking candy company. Like, that's his wall of candy. It's a bar. It's a wall of candy that also functions as a candy bar that is actively catered by a candy company that refills it when he needs them to be refilled. So he essentially just has infinite candy that comes with his house. When you reach a certain level of wealth, your house just comes with infinite candy. Does he have a home gym, though? Does Notch look like he has a home gym? Or should I say, does he look like he uses his home gym?
how long would that last? I have a good friend who posited a principle in a philosophical discussion we were having a few months ago: the necessity of human struggle. His argument basically suggested that we as people need to experience some aspect of adversity to truly feel fulfilled. He likened it to a room that closes in on a person, the idea that many of us need those walls to push back against, something of a challenge, or else we ultimately lose our own purpose in the world.
I wonder about this sometimes. I do wonder if, like, a certain lack of hardship in life can cause you to kind of go insane. Because admittedly, when things are like going perfect for me, like there's nothing going wrong, everything's going right, I kind of get bored. Not like bored in a negative way, but it's almost like I start to fall in a weird malaise depression where like perfection becomes my baseline and beyond perfection becomes needed to like have a good day, like a non-normal day. Does that make sense? Like you start to lose perspective and you lose your ability to be grateful for what you have. And I think it's why a lot of rich, extremely wealthy, powerful people are also depressed as fuck. Like, even though they have everything they could ever want, they can even afford the best therapy and meds in the world, they're still depressed as fuck because, like, no matter what, their baseline just can't reach anything and they're lazy, which is why I think the best way to live is to have enough wealth, like, to be able to have anything you want and to be able to, like, and anything you need, obviously, but to still orient yourself so that you have interests that are outside of necessity, right? Like, for example, like, get interested in a sport or get interested in a hobby that, like, goes beyond your ability to pay. Like, you can't pay to be really good at art. If, like, get into art and use all of your money to, like, fucking go crazy. Like, if you're a billionaire with nothing to do and you decide you want to get really into snorkeling, right? Like, you decide you want to get really into marine biology and snorkeling, you have all the money in the world to pursue that hobby. Like, get into some fucking hobbies. You can literally buy the best of the best stuff for any hobby. Like, how many times have you wanted to get into a hobby and you were like, God, if only I was rich, I could do this cool hobby. I could buy, like, the best of the best stuff for it and just hit the ground running with this dope-ass hobby, but you just don't have the time or money for it. Like, I feel like that's what rich people need to dedicate themselves to so they stop being so suicidal and depressed despite having literally everything they could need or want. Like, dedicate yourself to something that requires hard work to achieve because, you know, you don't need to work hard for anything anymore. Another poop. Like, that's what it is. Like, when you're rich and powerful, you stop having to work hard for anything, so you need to find something to work hard for. And I think things like skills and talents, like art and music and stuff like that, or fighting, or, like, if you want to do, like, a martial art or something, I think it's a good source of your time. So if there's any Oilers out there watching who are feeling suicidal, that's my recommendation to you. Get into something that, like, actively requires you to put effort and hard work into it to get good at it. It'll help your mental health. Because if you're rich and powerful, you're not working hard for anything, and you're never getting that dopamine that you get. That's what it is. Humans, objectively speaking, our brains get flooded with dopamine when we work hard for something and then achieve it. There is literally no better feeling, no more dopamine dumping feeling that we get than working really hard for something, facing a shit ton of trials and tribulations and achieving it, like literally reaching the lowest of the low, and then, like, it's over, boys, it's over. We're back, and it comes back from the bottom, and you achieve it against all the odds. No feeling for a human makes us feel more alive and feel more, like, happy about ourselves than that. And when you take away all forms of trials or tribulation, any form of having to work hard for anything in your life, I think over time, your brain just stops flooding those, like, those chemicals that you get from achieving something. So I guess you would want to get into a hobby, and that would help you with this.
Now, obviously, some people struggle far too much and other people get by alright without struggling. But I think there is a relevance, particularly for people who are used to some form of pressure, to have that completely removed from them. It's a very difficult environment to adapt to. Struggle is relative, and if you spent your whole life with this strong sense of purpose, to have yourself completely absolved of that purpose is quite jarring. And barely a few months after the Forbes article was published, Notch's celebratory tone appeared to take a turn towards something more pessimistic. On August the 29th, Notch sent out a series of tweets that appeared to lament his current lifestyle, initiating with the statement, "The problem with getting everything is you run out of reasons to keep trying, and human interaction becomes impossible due to imbalance." Notch then proceeds to talk about how although he has everything, he feels completely alienated, unable to create a human connection with those around him, especially on an intimate basis as people find his lifestyle overwhelming. He also seems frustrated at the fact that many of his former
It's because he's in need, I bet. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think that Notch must, personality-wise, be a real fucker for, like, in LA, for him to not be able to find some women willing to look past his overwhelming lifestyle and date him for his wealth, even. Like, like, he must be, like, full incel tier at this point if women are just refusing to get into relationships with him at that point. Like, how down the rabbit hole do you think he's gone? Because he was JQ posting. Like, just a couple years ago, he was JQ posting. He was doing it before Kanye made it cool to JQ post as, like, a celebrity.
former colleagues still seem to resent him, despite him believing that he treated them well. When one of the employees says that much of the response was just the initial shock, he completely flips out on them, saying, "Fuck all of you," which seemed a bit much for many people at the time. He had no trust for the world around him, and it showed. The meltdown may have been momentary for many, but it certainly outlined a real cloud to the silver lining of selling out. Unfortunately, Notch had reached this stage of success and influence where people treat you differently because of it. Even people close to you can seem distant, and you can't really trust their intent. You need mental fortitude to manage that, and to be frank, Marcus was a somewhat fragile person. Once the initial euphoria of that newfound wealth wore out, he probably wondered what was left. This brief tirade inspired a few reports and response articles from people who didn't necessarily have great sympathy for his predicament, but probably prompted the same suggestion for a solution. The person needed to find a way to alienate himself from that wealth and status. It's not an easy solution to undertake, but the problem will continue to be inescapable as long as he had nothing to work for and nobody to actually share it with.
Yes,
Snoop
there
Dogg
you
even
go.
weighed in on the
There it
matter,
is.
reminding persons that knowing who your real ones are is much more important than any material wealth.
Good job, Snoop. Like, dude, that's exactly what I said. Is that not exactly what I said? Like, you have to have purpose. Like, I know this sounds like such a, like, oh, rich, like, this sounds like what rich people say, like, on podcasts like Joe Rogan. Like, you know, honestly, wealth doesn't make you happy. They say with, like, Gucci headband on and all. And it's like, okay, dude, like, you've never had to want for anything in your life. Like, you're like, it's so easy for you to say that, but it is true that, like, human beings need purpose. Like, we actually do need a little bit of adversity or, like, a goal to reach that requires hard work. We, like, it's sort of necessary for our psychological development. It's just how we humans kind of function. Like, yeah. And he's saying exactly that here.
I don't think anyone needs Notch's level of money to be happy. You shouldn't have to give away your wealth to be happy necessarily, but you need to have something that can transcend the purpose of that money, whether that be friends, work, or an alternative outlet. Reflecting on Notch's life, maybe his purpose was rooted in a struggle of sorts with Minecraft and optimizing it, and now that it ended, so had Person's own greater sense of self. Marcus Person was rich, and everyone knew it, but for someone like him, that was seeming more like a curse than a blessing, and his rant, although aggressive, was to show great vulnerability. He needed something greater to latch onto, but maybe we got something worse.
Uh-oh. Here it comes. Mo problems. I like how that's so cool that he's like, he's got a bunch of different people to edit each section, so it's not a bunch of work on one single person. And not only that, but each editor is being credited for, each individual section they made. That's super cool. That's neat. It's not like necessary. Like, he didn't need to do this, but it's just so cool that he chose to. Yeah, he's a real one. He's a real YouTuber.
A few days after his venting session on the social media website, Notch decided to respond to those who suggested that he give his wealth away, stating that money wasn't the problem, it was the lifestyle. And although he may not be wrong, if you let your money influence your lifestyle, then you're feeding the problem. And less than a couple months later, he was back in Vegas. He seemed to attribute his current downcast mindset to the success, but he'd been successful for a while. It was just that this time round, he had something else to account for that success, and it simply wasn't enough. It distanced himself from nearly everyone in his life and made him untrusting of the world around him. Notch was the paranoid wreck who had no idea of where he was meant to go from here, and expressing it online wasn't going to help, as the whole place can often feel like you're headed in circles. You think that after he sold his shares, he'd have a lot less to say on the World Wide Web, but for someone who didn't want to be the center of attention anymore, he often still seemed obsessed with social media platforms. In his departure post, he characterized himself as a nerdy computer programmer who likes to have opinions on Twitter. But it seemed more than just the occasional hot takes at this point. To be honest, he seemed ever more invested with the goings-on around him, and that only continued to manifest itself as the online world became increasingly political.
Okay. So here's where I'm worried that TRO is just going to vaguely gesture at some What? Oh, I have to use a block here. Like, there's some kind of block that... Yeah, Gearbox. Yeah, okay.
As we all know, 2016 was a strange...
I'm worried that he's going to skim over and sort of vaguely kind of vaguely gesture at what it was that Notch said and did that got him canceled, quote unquote, the Nazi shit. Like, I'm wondering if he's going to elaborate, say, on the part where Notch insists that there's a particular tweet where Notch insists, for example, that trans people are forcing everybody to use their preferred pronouns and using compelled speech, and that you can be arrested for misgendering in Canada. This is objectively untrue. Like, the Bill C-16 thing does not do that. Like, this would be an easy thing for, like, him to call out and point out as wrong. Like, I'm wondering if he'll go... There's no way he doesn't get that far without going into detail about it. Like, to be fair, we're pretty early in the videos still, so there's a lot of time left. Maybe he's going to elaborate heavily. I really hope he does. I know that he watches my videos, so, like, TRO does, so I know that he's, like, vaguely progressive at least. He may be way more progressive than that, but at least vaguely progressive. At least. So I don't know if he's going to go full lefty here and, like, lay out why Notch's Nazi takes were bad, or if he's just going to sort of generally, like, explain that his takes were controversial and anti-establishment or whatever. All right, let's find out.
Time for the internet on reflection, particularly with the cosmic rise of Donald Trump and the general movement towards anti-SJW content that seemed to target people who are not always the best at expressing their beliefs. When working on Minecraft, Notch had generally seemed to adopt quite progressive ideas towards his game. Although not overtly political, he said that every character was genderless and that people had a right to interpret each of them to their own liking. It was part of Minecraft after all, the fact that an individual can have an experience personal to them. Despite not explicitly endorsing anyone before 2016, Notch was someone who would have been mostly aware of the discourse within political spheres. And throughout 2015, he had mostly expressed disdain for the prospective Republican candidate, Donald Trump, calling him a loon, and exhibited genuine confusion at people's belief in his suitability for office. He'd interact...
I didn't know that. He was radicalized post-selling Minecraft. That actually makes me feel better that he almost certainly wasn't a Nazi weirdo when he was involved with Minecraft and making it. It's after that he did all this shit. All right. So I guess his radicalization would have been 2015 to 2016. That's funny. That's when I got radicalized to the right too. Radicalized. It depends on, the wording is cringe, but regardless. Like, that's when I fell down the rabbit hole too. So, but Notch got to the point where he was tweeting out QAnon shit, so... Let's watch.
Interacted with a few YouTubers who expressed anti-SJW beliefs and stated that he would support Bernie Sanders if choosing between him and Hillary. As the US election approached, he seemed to become more and more invested in the issue though. Although he was vocal that he was not a fan of Trump's, he turned most of his ire towards Hillary Clinton, who he felt had acted dishonestly. I'm not going to go into every single detail regarding his political beliefs at this specific point in time, but as election day approached, his stance on Trump continued to soften, and eventually he admitted that if he was forced to choose between Trump and Clinton, he would probably choose Trump. This wasn't an exceptional stance at the time. Particularly online, people's resentment for Clinton was very palpable, and many didn't want him.
He's completely right. Online, being pro-Trump was honestly expected. If you were in favor of Hillary Clinton online, expect massive amounts of dunking. Back in 2015 or 2016.
Her to win just for the principle that they thought the Democrats had the opportunity to present a genuinely radical candidate. Well, at least by the standards of US politics. Trump became the anti-hero, anti-establishment figure that in spite of his very visible flaws became a punishment to all those happy to settle for a miserable status quo. Therefore, although his opinions were a little outspoken for a person of his status, these didn't exactly strike anyone as truly frightening. I think establishment is a very important word to use when analyzing these figures, because Notch is an independent game developer who cared deeply about the game he designed, similarly saw himself as a figure taking on the long-entrenched bureaucracies and structures that they employ to stay in power. He'd always believed that many of the industry players sacrificed user experience for their own gain, and they would try and oppress any actual innovation. Notch was one of the few large gaming entrepreneurs who didn't outwardly...
Basically, Notch had a upbringing of sorts. Basically, his experience had primed him towards this sort of untrusting of the establishment, untrusting of, like, what he's told to believe, quote unquote, kind of perspective. And that's why when he got really into politics, after not having anything to do other than browse the internet all day, he was so susceptible to these countercultural ideas of the anti-SJW, political structure. The idea like the left had gone too far and were the real, enemy and all that shit. I'm guessing this is where it started.
Attack matters like piracy, he was an advocate for the little guy and in-game experience. Additionally, he had always been largely skeptical of national governments and expressed deep concern about a surveillance state, particularly that relating to the US. That is where we introduce the sort of SJW that he also seemed to rally against during the election of Donald Trump, additionally crediting their behavior as much the reason that the Don got elected.
SJW back then was literally as big of a buzzword, just passed around everywhere, as woke. Like, SJW was then's woke. They're the same thing. Literally, directly, comparatively the same thing. They mean the same thing. They mean the same group of people. They're just the same thing. It's just different times. They relabeled it because SJW started to become cringe to use as an insult because all the content creators that made it cringe, like made it an insult, had all fallen off and exposed how huge of clowns they were. And so they had to find a new word that meant essentially the same thing to convince people to be against, and it became woke.
The sort of political correctness that many of them preached was not something that Notch had ever related to. Sure, he wasn't the sort of person who was particularly offensive or hurtful to people, but he always saw issues like freedom of speech as being non-negotiable. He saw any attack on it as an act of tyranny designed to oppress people who may speak truth to power. He wanted to fight against what he saw as this corporate sterilization of people's expression. He was also becoming increasingly involved in issues relating to the treatment of, quote, white men, and the use of identity politics in general. Now, I wouldn't describe any of his positions as hateful, or even with the intent to do harm at this point. Sometimes I think he spoke from a point of genuine frustration towards toxic factions in many movements.
At this point. Don't chat. He clarified at this point. That heavily implies that it got hateful later on. He said, I don't consider his takes hateful at this point. But he's going to move on in a minute. And this is true. At this point, he was in, like, the chud zone. Like, he was getting just into the anti-SJW stuff, and was starting to have his mind opened up to this SJW problem. And from here, basically any pushback he got from the left, depending on how it was done, was going to push him further to the right. And that's exactly what happened. Every cancellation he got on Twitter after this pushed him further to the right. And he went from talking about how he had some concerns about the SJWs to how feminism has gone too far. Another cancellation, he's talking about how he wonders why we're not allowed to talk about the Jewish question. And you know, then he's going into talking about how trans people are deranged. Like, every time he gets further and further and more crazy every cancellation, because he sees lefties disagreeing with him and, like, calling him out as a verification that what he believes is true. Because why would the left try to shut him down unless he's got a point?
Who were advocating for otherwise righteous causes. However, his frustration didn't subside in the year following, particularly with the online world further contorting.
But come on, buddy.
Real major projection right now. Donald Trump will take Ohio. And CNN projects Donald Trump will carry the state of Florida. Huge win for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, we project, will win in Kentucky, in Indiana, with its 11 electoral votes.
But why should it matter to someone like Marcus Persson? The dude wasn't the target.
Bro, it was so wild that Trump won the election with less votes than Hillary. Like, that was when I learned what the Electoral College was, and I was like, oh, so the elections have never been fair? I thought it was like whoever gets the most votes wins. That's how it works, right? It's like, no, basically, the Republicans have ensured that no matter what, like, even though they're a minority of the population, they'll still be able to hold power. So, yeah.
Of this, and it's not like his freedom was being affected by it. Well, at the start of 2017, a few large YouTubers, most notably PewDiePie, came under scrutiny for their behavior online. At the time, many who sympathized with these creators saw large corporations punching down on the freedom of expression previously held by many creators, whether or not the humor was in good taste. In particular, this sort of battle emerged all over the internet between traditional standards and the sort of Wild West approach that other parts of the online world possessed, and how increasingly influential in modern culture they were becoming. The online world and their communities were were facing down approval from many angles, especially from those who felt it excluded and alienated marginalized groups who deserved a space as much as anyone else.
Basically, at this point, the internet was having a massive schism between more sanitized, family-friendly content that, like, you know, your Markipliers, your PewDiePies, and at this point, like, PewDiePie was fairly sanitized. And you're more, like, chill, laid back, like, Let's Players, you're, like, you had your, like, more normie, chill content, and then you had your super edgelords, like your Filthy Franks, your iDubbbz's, your H3H3s at the time, you know? Like, you had the people that were actively out there being, like, as shocking and offensive as possible, doing satire, playing characters, being edgy, and building a community around being edgy. And there was this schism where, like, there was that edgy side of the internet, and there was, like, the normie side of the internet. And they started to bleed into each other.
This all then reached into the video game industry, particularly given the aftermath of Gamergate, something that Notch had previously stayed rather neutral on, but now seemed to feel quite strongly about. This criticism of the current online culture was often advocated by progressively identifying people, the SJWs per se, who were also vociferously anti-Trump. I think a fair few people who were attached to that sort of wild west of the internet drew a correlation between Trump and a specific way of online life, particularly that freedom of speech given how Trump was a pretty unfiltered person, to say it lightly. Well, with infinite time...
Basically, as always, the freedom of speech they mean is being able to, like, say the N-word and stuff. Like, we've seen with Twitter what it means. Like, Elon Musk is probably the biggest, like, free speech lover type on the internet, and we've seen what he means when he says free speech. He's literally censored a bunch of keywords like trans, transgender, dysphoria, I think, is banned. I may be wrong about that one, but, like, literally a dozen plus words that have to do with, like, LGBT people he's banned. Why is that werewolf not turning back into a human? He should be just, you know, fucking right off.
Time and money, I guess Notch had finally found another struggle, but was this one worth fighting for? Mark as a person had always held a sort of morbid curiosity for these sorts of areas. Discussing the often contentious 4chan in an early interview, he describes it as possibly being one of the closest things we've got to a self-conscious virtual entity on the internet, even referencing it in an old intro screen for the game. In many ways, that sort of independent-minded section of the internet was what put Minecraft on the map, and so it wasn't completely beyond belief why he felt protective about it. I think in many ways, people like Notch saw these establishment types coming in and trying to dictate their own standards that much of the internet didn't perceive similarly. I think it's fair to say that although Notch's opinions on the matters in the previous part weren't completely out of nowhere given his background, they were somewhat different to many around him at the time, and had definitely alienated some people. When someone asked him why it seemed like everyone hated him now, he replied they didn't hate him, they agreed, but were just afraid to speak up. And as what he said received pushback, he became more and more stubborn, and in turn more and more irrational. Even if you agreed with any point he was making, it was lost in the sense that he was fighting a greater cultural battle. When an incident occurred at VidCon involving Anita Sarkeesian clashing heads with her critics, and Ant Green responding, he tagged Green telling him to be on—
Dude. Fuck, that entire thing was such a crazy and influential event that had so many far-reaching repercussions, okay? So you know how Boogie2988 has a reputation as being a kind of spineless, especially and like a fence sitter and like not being able to stand up for himself, and in large part, like, you see a lot of people bullying him about that. He's a OG YouTuber for those that don't know who he is. He was a like panelist on that panel about internet harassment because he's been a victim of a lot of it, and Anita Sarkeesian was also up there on that panel. Now, basically, like, Anita Sarkeesian basically made a point at the end of the panel about how women in the gaming industry and online get a lot of disproportional harassment and bullshit, like, everywhere they look, everywhere they go, and that she just wants to bring more attention to that. And that was like her closing statement on the panel. And then Boogie's closing statement turn comes around, and he's like, instead of doing his closing statement, he responds to her closing statement saying, like, I don't want to necessarily disagree with you, but like, I just want to say that like men also receive a lot of harassment online. The internet itself is just inherently toxic and full of harassment. It's not an exclusively woman thing. Like, it's basically a very centristy, like, hand wavy kind of response that, you know, he's trying to seem like he's you know, he cares, but it's coming off as not anything like that. But regardless, Anita Sarkeesian had a bunch of like anti-SJW YouTubers who had been like making videos about her for years, literally in the front row staring at her during that panel. Like Sargon, Chris Raygun, I think some black guy was there. Shuonhead might have been there as well. Andy Worski, I think, was there. Just all the it was all the like anti-SJWs were there, just like in the front row, like watching her, and she was clearly quite upset by this. And after the show, like, kind of reamed Boogie out for like kind of not giving her a chance to respond to his point, because his closing statement was a response to her closing statement, so she couldn't respond to what he said. He had the last word on that matter, and it was a panel, not a debate, so it was like kind of disrespectful for Boogie to do that. But Boogie ended up telling the story on Twitter afterwards, and everyone was like, Anita Sarkeesian, that horrible bitch. And everybody like jumps to Boogie's defense because they hate Anita Sarkeesian. They want to find any excuse for her to be bad and to defend someone else from her evil, right? But Boogie ends up having a talk with her in private, and they end up working out their disagreement and like the thing that they had an issue over. And so Boogie goes online and is like, hey, everybody, me and Anita are fine now. We're all good. There's no more bad blood. We worked it out and everything. But the internet was like, what do you mean you worked it out with Anita Sarkeesian? What do you mean you worked it out with Anita Sarkeesian? So everybody who was defending him all of a sudden was now calling him a spineless coward for now defending or being cool with Anita Sarkeesian. So much so to the extent that I literally remember watching a 3 to 4 hour long debate, more of like a therapy session that Rags had with Boogie, YouTuber Rags, where Boogie was trying to convince... or where Rags was trying to convince Boogie that Anita is actually evil and that she's not reasonable. She's actually a massive grifting scammer, and that he needs to immediately no longer be cool with Anita Sarkeesian. Like, I literally watched that debate when it happened and was like, yeah, good point, Rags, good point. Destroy Boogie. He's being spineless. Like, oh my god, that VidCon was like a massive event in like the timeline of Gamergate. Oh Jesus, that gave me a flashback. I need to kill that kid in a minute when I make a new sword.
On the right side of history. That's a strong term for a situation that related to a commentary spat at a panel. At the end of Pride Month in 2017, there was a movement called Heterosexual Pride Day. Notch noticed this and stated that if you didn't support it, you deserve to be shot. Eventually, he did retract this statement and apologize, but it was clear that he was taking this all a little too seriously. It was clear that this was a historic battle to person for the soul of society, and this seemed to be influencing his political beliefs as well. In a May 2017 interview, then President Donald Trump made the bold claim that he invented the...
Jesus Christ, every time there's something going on in the video I really want to talk about, shit starts to go down. Oh my god. Okay. My dogs are okay. What just happened?
And had always held a sort of morbid curiosity for these sorts of areas. Discussing the often contentious 4chan in an early interview, he described he alienated some people. When someone asked him why it seemed like everyone hated him now, he replied they didn't hate him, they agreed. Did retract this statement and apologize, but it was clear that he was taking this all a little too...
Yeah, basically he did like the heterosexual Pride Day. If you don't support it, you deserve to get shot by a cameraman with a gun. Was what it was. It was 3 different tweets. Like he did the like, oh, I'm walking it back in the second one, but then unwalked it back in the final one. So yeah, he didn't apologize as far as I know, and probably still stands by this stuff, even if he did.
Too seriously. It was clear that this was a historic battle to person for the soul of society, and this seemed to be influencing his political beliefs as well. In a May 2017 interview, then President Donald Trump made the bold claim that he invented the phrase priming the pump, which is particularly impressive given that in modern terms, it was first applied in the 1930s, the decade before Trump was born. Mockery ensued, and many people took to their favorite social media site to take the piss, including video game writer and YouTube critic Mikey Newman. Person, after having the reference explained to him, makes the judgment that it is just more baseless Trump bashing because they are afraid, which certainly...
Yeah, I'll get into this in a minute. Basically, what I'm gonna ask you guys a question in a minute. Basically, like, every time Trump revealed himself to be like clearly a dumbass piece of shit, everyone's excuse was, well, I don't care what Trump says, I care about his actions. And it's like, okay, but like, he's not president yet. Why would you vote for him when everything he says you agree is bad? And you're like, you're just betting that like his actions are going to be contrary when he gets into office? And they'd be like, yeah, and they'd vote for him. Like literally, like, everybody was just like convinced that every negative thing that came out about Trump was just the Democrats panicking and the establishment trying to destroy him. And he had everyone convinced that everyone was just after him in a witch hunt. He's still got a lot of people convinced everyone's just after him in a witch hunt.
Prompted some confusion. It seemed that as the months passed, Notch had become more preoccupied with this idea that every narrative against Trump was part of some greater conspiracy to prevent him from making America great again. And well, it's a bit far-fetched. The thing about a lot of conspiracy theories is that they do often start with one genuine observation. Were certain echelons of the media disproportionately outraged with Trump's presidency when they'd given others a pass? You could make an argument for it. You could say that they weren't anywhere near as critical as previous presidencies when they enacted policy that could significantly harm a population. However, the fallacious link comes when you conclude that therefore they hate Trump because he's finally doing the right thing, rather than the fact that he's unorthodox and generates views for financially focused businesses. There are plenty of people online who are quite aware of establishment shortcomings, but also felt like it was still valid to point out issues regarding Trump. When he makes a claim that he invented a term that existed before he was born, then yeah, I don't think it's unjustified to have a bit of a chuckle about it. However, Notch didn't seem to be seeing it this way, and neither were a lot of Americans. So with that in mind, let's talk about a little conspiracy theory that occurred the year before, known as Pizzagate.
Shit. Okay, all right. Okay, the right opinion. You do have the right opinion. Okay, so we're going in. Yeah, bro's going in. Okay, he was dick teasing us this whole time. He's been cock teasing us the whole video, vaguely referencing the controversial takes that Notch has had. But we're like full on getting into the political climate, the state, everything that was going on. Okay, this isn't just a Minecraft video. This is a full on the right opinion, like BreadTube politics type video. Not really BreadTube. I mean, it's like marginally left leaning. It's essentially left leaning, but not whatever. I doubt that the right opinion would like to be called a BreadTuber, but it's got that, it's a BreadTube type beat, if you know what I mean.
Pizzagate was the allegation there was an insidious satanic underground sex ring being operated by the Clintons and Democrats out of a Washington, D.C. pizzeria. It was rooted in an email link from a Clinton campaigner which theorists claimed contained a secret code that tied all of this together, and eventually resulted in a gunman turning up to the pizzeria and firing his rifle at the institution. There were a deluge of
Remember, guys, every time a right-wing shooter motivated by right-wing conspiracy theories popularized by popular right-wing figures goes and does terror, all the right-wing figures insist it's a psyop, it was a false flag, don't say the name of the shooter, don't show their face, don't show their manifesto, they just want attention, deprive them of it. But when the one trans shooter shoots a place up, it plastered everywhere. Like, I've been watching I haven't been watching them, but I've been watching YouTube, and I've been seeing videos recommended to me that are literally just random gun YouTuber guys watching the body cam footage of the cop that shot the shooter, and just, like, it's just them, like, going, whoa, yeah, they shot that T-slur so good, yeah, watch them drop, heh! I like how you could see the body twitching a little bit after they shoot her a few times, because, you know, they misgender. It's like, damn, like, it's very clear these are gun YouTubers that are very right-wing, obviously, just taking joy in watching the cops just slaughter a trans person. And, like, yes, it was a justified killing, but fuck. Like, it's the same as, like, a bunch of racists watching, like, police videos of, like, cops killing, like, black criminals that were in shootouts. Like, yeah, I guess in this case the killings were justified, but the people watching them and celebrating them, like, are not they're doing it because they want to, because they're racist. In that case, it's because they're transphobic. Like, it's been really bizarre. There's a lot of people that have been like talking about how much of a Giga Chad the cop is for killing the T-Slur, and it's like there's a very big difference between like Grand Thumb came out to say there are only two genders. You will see a lot of I've seen a lot of gun YouTubers coming out to be publicly anti-trans following the shooting, because they see like the trans community as a scapegoat to keep guns from being attacked by the left in this country. If the attention is on trans people, it's not on guns, and they can keep doing their gun videos. So yeah, a lot of gun YouTubers actively encourage their viewers to vote right-wing and everything.
Two other related incidents to the theory, which has widely been discredited by mainstream institutions. Emphasis on the mainstream institutions here. Now, that's not to say it has credit. I personally don't think it does. But when you believe a theory that dictates all authority figures are in on something, them telling you it doesn't exist isn't going to be convincing enough. Pizzagate mostly fizzled out after the 2016 election, particularly given that Donald Trump actually won. But in August 2017, Notch published a tweet stating that in fact, Pizzagate was real. A bit late to the party all things considered, but quite the claim regardless. In elaborating on his stance, he rants about binary politics and how there might actually be pieces of evidence that have supported this theory, but that it might also be drugs, though the Podestas do look like people in a police sketch, and the pizza place has weird art and branding, etc, etc, etc. There were already a lot of retorts online to the claims made in Notch's very long thread, but he seems certain something is up, and although people may perceive his thread as being a bit behind the current political discourse, it may not have been as unprompted as some people thought. On the forums like 4chan, this narrative had been brewing, but one that integrated a new perspective. That Donald Trump was aware and working to bring this worldwide satanic cabal down, and that it would only be a matter of time until many significant public figures were reprimanded and charged. Similar versions of this story had already been promoted on the poll section of 4chan, but come October this began to escalate. On the 27th of the aforementioned month, a user by the name of Q Clearance Patriot claimed that Hillary Clinton was soon going to be arrested, and civil unrest would follow. Q clearance is a level of clearance used for the Department of Energy. It gives you access to a variety of data that would otherwise be restricted to the public. The inference here being that this guy was someone high up in government, and he was speaking out due to his patriotic nature. This seemed to capture the imagination for many in the...
Dude, it is wild. Is this the origin of QAnon? Yeah, he's literally going over the origin of QAnon in this video. I am so fucking glad. There's a good, you know what? There's a good chance that The Right Opinion watches my video reacting to his video, and, hey man, you're doing a great job. This is some good shit. From my, as a Minecraft player, this is a great video. And as a political pundit, this is a great video. You've nailed it on both fronts. The Minecraft side of this, fucking nailed it. The political side of this, so far, fucking nailed it. And we're only about halfway through.
Forum, and was followed quickly by another post that seemed to incriminate other popular Democratic figureheads and donors, implying that there would soon be a large-scale reckoning for all those who Trump viewed as criminal rogue elements. This would quickly manifest and grow, receiving more and more media attention and garnering a following from many committed Trump devotees. I think what happens to many people is the feeling of a greater cause and explanation for Trump's actions. He had always pledged to drain the swamp and deliver justice to a system that had legitimately been rigged against so many people. Q himself occupied this position of unfalsifiability, whose content could only be proven by time, and often leveraged on the belief of the individual, and it turned out that many were actually quite...
Ironically, it's funny because that's exactly what religious, like propagandist, fundamentalist types do. They base all of their assertions on the idea that you just have to wait and see. And they'll say whatever it takes to keep on delaying the timetables. Okay, so this did not work. I have to get this thing working, and I don't know how.
Prepared to believe. Although Notch was not necessarily directly involved with anything QAnon related in its inception, and there's no direct evidence tying him to that, the correlation between his interest in Pizzagate and the founding of this sect of the internet seemed to imply that he was spending a bit too much time in these forums, and as he became more and more outspoken, people began to take notice.
All right, here's the trans part.
Make no mistake, Notch had definitely been pushing people's buttons online, but overall this hadn't affected his status related to his work at this point, likely because most of his tweets didn't have much staying power online and people didn't really care enough about some dude shouting into the void. He held steadfast on most of his opinions, but up to the end of 2018, he didn't seem to garner much attention outside the discourse sphere that he was involved in. However, there was the occasional reference to Operation Mockingbird, a theory that refers to the alleged brainwashing of the public through media propaganda, and had been regularly mentioned by those on QAnon, and Q himself who mentions it in his original post. Although it never attracted that much media attention, it was indicative of what he was doing with his time. However, as Notch's takes grew increasingly strong, there was a sense that what he was saying couldn't be ignored. This began in December 2018, which was met with a flurry of statements by person, some relating to race, some relating to general political identity, and just some relating to whatever the hell this is. He still presented himself as someone on the side of
What? What was that?
little guy, but it seems he had identified a great he was saying couldn't be ignored. This began in December 2018, which was met with a flurry of statements by person, some relating to race, some
When Trump opens his mouth, winning occurs.
relating to general political identity, and just some relating to whatever the hell this is.
Be careful. You know what this is. You know what this is. Come on, the right opinion. Come on. You know what this is. You know what he's saying here. You know what he's implying. You got. Come on, man. I know Nazis are pretty popular right now, but I feel like we can still call something Nazi when it's obvious. Come on. We know what they mean. Come on. We've been on the internet. We've been in here. We've been in here for a while. We know how it is.
He still presented himself as someone on the side of the little guy, but it seems he had identified a greater battle against those who were at the top and the far left who were controlling every aspect of his life. If you were with them, you were ontologically evil. There was no two ways about it. Now, these tweets were definitely more concerning than the previous set. The least you could say about his comments up to this point was that although they were often provocative, the intended targets were often general concepts of political correctness, SJWs, and establishment figures, all of which were not without their flaws, even if the obsession with them was a bit overwrought on Notch's behalf. However, these tweets seem to harp on some other more questionable theories, in particular relating to IQ differences between racial populations. Now, this has been the subject of debate in certain scientific circles, with many broadly on the side of the opinion that IQ is not affected by race, more due to other environmental factors that may coincide with race. However, how does a human-generated spectrum of intelligence help discussion on racial differences? How would it dictate the world we live in? The truth is that people are still individuals, and anyone from any race can be really smart or really stupid. Notch had clearly grown to hate the general state of the gaming industry as he felt it was dictated by a small proportion of easily offended people. The left received a lot of the blame when companies made decisions that others thought they were being pressured into, but many of them were decisions ultimately made by the company. What would anyone who actually felt strongly about these matters done if the businesses in this industry just turned around to them and said, no, we're not doing that, or just ignored them? Probably not much, maybe some angry tweets, but that would be it. And Notch had survived all right to this point. Despite the fact that he didn't have direct ties to any companies, he was still symbolically associated with Minecraft and commemorated in the game. However, come March 2019, Notch was once again ready to test that, and this time he was going all out. First mentioning Operation Mockingbird again, but then dropping any innuendo and just outwardly stating that Q was legit, and that we should not be trusting the media. To be honest, I don't trust the media too much either, but for someone who doesn't like binary politics, he sure likes to make binary choices. After a couple days of continuing to push these general narratives that the populace was being lied to by the establishment, he takes to Twitter to make the interesting observation that suddenly all the requests for him to stream and podcast have stopped. How curious. I guess the establishment decided that his time was nigh.
Yeah, they'll do this. Like, once they start getting alienated because they're being radicalized and whatever... Like, if they're falling in with groups of people, they don't necessarily have to be, but if they're falling in with groups of people that are radicalizing them further, they'll ask them to kind of, like, shove off other people in their lives and kind of alienate anyone who isn't also bought into this ideology. I think the term's called defoo or something like that. It's an old phrase for, like clan members getting radicalized and shit, but yeah. If you want to know who controls you, look at who you are not allowed to criticize. The kids in the orphanage control me. True. You're not allowed to criticize the kids in the orphanage.
But his Twitter was still growing, which is something, I guess. I mean, he was making up to 100 tweets a day. With Notch fully embracing the QAnon movement and the man behind it, he definitely raised a few eyebrows, with articles being published on his recent turn to conspiracy theories. However, not finished to his crusade, he turns his attention to a variety of matters. First, drawing a comparison between dressing as another race and dressing as the opposite gender and saying there is no difference. This opinion didn't seem to attract too much traffic, as it could be seen as referring to cross-dressing. However, not too long after, Notch was back to business on a plethora of fronts, sometimes posting rather vaguely, which attracted some QAnon responses, other times just cutting to the chase and reminding people that casual murdering of infants for organ harvesting purposes is not acceptable. Hard agree on that one, Notch. He then writes a thread seemingly going truth mode on society. You cannot negotiate with these people who are trying to destroy human civilization as we know it. At least that's what I take from the thread. Though the last two tweets seem more directed to the trans community, mentioning gender dysphoria and pronouns, including the claim that trans people are trying to make it illegal to use the wrong pronouns, even though actually it's them who have the pronouns wrong. This began to receive some serious pushback, especially from some of his trans followers who are particularly enthusiastic about Minecraft, with
These tweets are the ones that I covered in my very first political video. These particular anti-trans tweets.
one sharing a pro-trans message in a My Little Pony format stating that trans women are women. Notch didn't appreciate that, and quote tweeted the person stating that they were wrong, and although trans women were deserving of support as much as anyone else, that anyone advocating for this position was evil, and feeding into a dangerous, mentally ill delusion, using his sister's body dysmorphia as an example.
Damn, Notch was ahead of his time. That's the genocidal rhetoric the right's using now.
When further challenged on this, it seems he's more concerned about the authoritarian nature of many people to, quote, demand that they be addressed by specific pronouns. He stands his ground, states that it is illegal in many places already, and agreeing with another tweet that if they do this unquestionably, they will also be walking back women's rights, seemingly adopting a more trans-exclusionary radical feminist standpoint. Now, I do not know the law in every country or region, but the fact that Notch did not seem to cite any sources or even anecdotal content made these claims rather hard to work with, and when being asked what this all was about, he commented, "The Great Awakening," which is another event commonly referenced on QAnon where the greater population becomes aware of the
This is a thing that Tim Pool and, what's his name? The British guy that's really obnoxious? Paul Joseph Watson. That's the shit that Paul Joseph Watson talks about, too.
truth, not seem to be framing his tweets from the lens that he was punching up against an oppressive regime, but many people didn't seem to agree. Although it was true that certain industries were striving towards greater diversity, many didn't think it was really at the request of any specific demographic. It was more just a financially intelligent thing to do to give products greater appeal, as the number of people in certain groups outnumbered the people who were annoyed by these groups' existence. As someone who made a game whose whole existence can be defined by the individual, and as a person who emphasized that in the past, this shouldn't be new information to Notch, but he came to the conclusion that this time it was state mandated. However, in the end it just seemed like he was targeting a group of people, whereas misinformation could be making targets out of them. It seemed that as time passed, he was growing only more conspiratorial. Throughout most of March, Notch continued to back its positions unapologetically, responding in an increasingly blasé manner to those who showed hostility to them. And if there was any doubt about it, you could just look at his bio, which contained a link to the website where Q would regularly post. Safe to say, Notch was...
Damn. That's pretty undeniable, bro. That's pretty undeniable.
Definitely testing the patience of those who didn't hold his beliefs and still associated with him, most notably Minecraft itself. Person's recent turn to conspiracy theories had almost locked him in a self-inflicted cycle. As he became more and more extreme, fewer and fewer people felt truly comfortable with his ideas, and consequently probably weren't as keen to entertain his presence. Notch observed this and embraced his alienation. He's been an outcast before and he was ready to be an outcast again.
Completely alienating himself. And every single person that he was alienating himself from, like that alienation only reassured him that everything he believes is true. Because one of the taglines of the ideology is people will reject you for speaking this unfortunate truth. And so they see people not liking what they have to say as verification that it must be true.
Likely attributing part of the reason to the fact that they couldn't handle him speaking the truth. Many of these people were probably in on it as well. In 2019 though, after the string of tweets we've just covered, Microsoft began to decouple their casual, if still meaningful, relationship. It first began with the simple removal of references to him in the loading screen. This seemed to be rather insignificant on the surface. However, up to this point, it was extremely rare for any splash text to be erased, only happening a handful of times in Minecraft's lifespan. At the time, many suspected this to be related to the instance analyzed in the previous part. However, Microsoft refused to comment on the matter, and ultimately this was deemed rather trivial. However, there
I secured the Vosh raid, comrade? Hell yeah, Bluestone. Dude, you should have seen. Hey, welcome, Vosh raiders, welcome. Come to my website. Come vibe. White Nervosa made me a website too. Come hang out. Make an account. Come vibe. We're playing Minecraft. We're reacting to a video about Notch going down the Nazi pipeline. By the Right Opinion, it just came out today. It's a really good video. We're popping off. We're going to talk about some dope-ass drama that's happened today in the upcoming segments. Is it Notch a Nazi? You're damn right he's a Nazi. We're watching a video about it now. So come to the website. Get some hot cocoa. Pull your dick out and start stroking. Sit your ass down. Sit your white asses down in my chat.
There was another event round the corner that would test Microsoft's position on the matter, that being the 10th anniversary of Minecraft's publication to the internet. It made sense that Notch wasn't involved with the public image of Minecraft as it was, but at the end of the day, without him, Minecraft wouldn't exist, and the 10th anniversary was a celebration of just that. By not commenting on the removal of the splash text that credits him, Microsoft had the choice open so they wouldn't seem hypocritical if they did invite him. However, barely a month after, it seems they had made a decision that he would not be included in the Landmark Festival for all things Minecraft, with a spokesperson telling the press, his comments and opinions do not reflect those of Microsoft or Mojang and are not representative of Minecraft. Notch
Get fucked, Notch. Get fucked, Notch. If I had like some hard dance music going off, I could do the Z's meme where it's him doing this and it says "Don't care" plus you're a woman. Such a good meme.
didn't seem to make any public comment himself. He moved on to playing the game Factorio. He seemed to be having fun with it at least. In the run-up to the event, he made a couple vague posts here and there which were hard to interpret, but on the day of the anniversary, he put out a single tweet reading, "Happy birthday, I love you," smiley face. It reached almost 30,000 likes, which is far more than any of his previous argumentative tweets had reached, and in these moments of wholesomeness, you almost forget what he was tweeting barely a couple months before. In a way, Minecraft's decision was probably in the best interests of everyone. If Notch still held his beliefs pretty ardently at this point, I'm sure he probably saw his exclusion as a badge of honor above anything else. If you believe in that sort of satanic cabal, Microsoft is definitely a part of it. However, I think Notch likely had a different viewpoint that could be illuminated by a few tweets. Although not commenting on his exclusion from the anniversary event, Notch did briefly comment on Microsoft removing the in-game references to him. After expressing regret for something assumedly relating to his position on trans people, he responds to a comment to someone saying that Minecraft removing references to him may be a way to help him process what he had been saying and doing. This comment seems to demonstrate some contrition for his recent antics, and seemingly accepts his fate for whatever happens next.
Did he fall out of the pipeline, but it's too late for him? That would be so tragic. I want to see that interaction there better. I want to get a better look at that interaction.
Although not commenting on his exclusion from the anniversary event, Notch did briefly comment on Microsoft removing the in-game references to him. After expressing regret for something assumedly relating to his position.
The path is narrow because we're curious. There are so many more lies to tell ourselves than truths. I wish I hadn't hurt you. I really do love you. This sounds like he's on like deranged posting, drunk or high in the night. Notch, you created my favorite game of all time, but as an ally and a close friend of many LGBT people, I can't look at Minecraft the same again.
Position on trans people. He responds to a comment.
Look at it as yours then. I like my memories making Minecraft much more than I would want to own it now. Microsoft taking my name out feels like a way for me to process what I did.
Someone saying
I really
that
do love all people, even though I'm dumb sometimes. Do you think maybe this was him, like, being sad and honest drunk one night? Like, just revealing that, like, the bitterness and the hatred he's been, like, tweeting out has just been, like, coming from a place of him being, like, miserable and lonely. Do you think that's what this is, chat? I'm interested to see where this goes from here. I'm glad we paused to read this.
Minecraft removing references to him may be a way to help him process what he had been saying and doing. This comment seems to demonstrate some contrition for his recent antics, and seemingly accepts his fate for whatever happens next. People had additionally started a movement to recognize Hatsune Miku as the creator of...
Oh, I ratioed Notch on Twitter once, guys. I hope you guys know. I forget often, I have to remind myself, but I've ratioed Notch on Twitter before.
Minecraft, and Notch appeared to take it on the chin, stating that letting go is key. It's hard to really tell where Notch stood in his comments, as he neither issued a formal retraction or reassertion following them. He seemed to regret how he'd phrased it himself and that he had hurt people.
It's not hard. Most of his tweets do not break 1,000 likes these days. I mean, you could literally see here, like even back in 2019, his tweets weren't breaking 1,000 likes often.
But didn't elaborate on whether he stood by his opinions. Regardless, he seemed to accept that where he was and where Minecraft was were not the same place. And for that much, he was right. They weren't. Over the following year, he mostly refrained from talking politics directly, the occasional comment about Trump or Hillary, but ones that were not too hard to read into. I honestly find a fair few of his tweets
J Spoon in YouTube chat just said I ratioed Notch with Minecraft porn. Good shit.
hard to completely understand sometimes, and his use of the word evil seems to have lost its meaning, to be honest. There was a hoax that he had passed away from a drug overdose, which was obviously not true. I think it once again likely arose from someone who was probably not a fan, but it was quickly debunked given that Notch was still firing off tweets every other hour. Although it was safe to say that Notch had been less provocative than he had been, he was still quite loud with his opinions when he chose to be. He still gave off the energy of one of those people who says they're not being political, but they clearly are at points. In August of 2020, a YouTuber by the name of Game Maker's Toolkit decided to try and run some ads on their channel. They posted their conclusion on their Twitter and referenced certain re-election ads from Mr. Trump. Notch, seemingly displeased with this comment, requested them to drop the politics, which GMTK said they would if Notch in return deleted his Twitter account. Surprisingly, the person decided to agree. GMTK took down their tweet, and Notch took down his account, taking the world back to the blissful days before people cared about who their president was and that crap. Except a few days later, Notch came back, explained that he was worried someone would claim his name tag, so had to do it for security reasons, and at that point just felt he had to start tweeting anyway.
Was he upset about the pro-Trump take or the anti-Trump take? What was the take that was political he was upset with? Presumably an anti-Trump take, right? Like a Biden ad ran on his thing or something? Would you say which gun YouTubers? I find a lot of them sus. I can tell you which gun YouTubers I've seen doing that I know are right-wing. Brandon Herrera is definitely pretty right-leaning. I like his content. I've even thought he's pretty funny when he goes on PKA, but, I mean, he's definitely more conservative. Garand Thumb, definitely more right-leaning. What's his name? The Cody's Ranch? Kyle's Ranch, not the guy on that's in not Russia, in Georgia, in the woods, not FPS Russia. The guy who's got the cap and he's got his little setup in the woods and he does the ballistics and he like does little skits at the beginning of his videos. What's his name? Demolition Ranch. Yeah, Demolition Ranch. Thank you, Tree Pigman 83. Demolition Ranch, I think, is pretty right-leaning. Donut Operator, yep, very right-wing. He's like an ex-cop, I think. And he just does content doing the bootlicking stuff. Yeah, a lot of them are boomer conservatives. Kentucky Ballistics, I've never watched them as far as I know.
Which doesn't make much sense, but his return to Twitter couldn't be a surprise. I think it's fair to observe the fact that although many tweets covered in the last couple parts obviously did generate controversy amongst communities, they didn't really attract too much attention from those outside the immediate sphere.
Whoa, so many people came here from the Vosh raid. Wow, we're at almost 500 people here right now. God damn. Thank you, I really appreciate that. Well, hopefully you enjoy your stay, everybody. Make sure to come over to the website. It's the best way to watch. And make sure to leave a like as well. It's completely free and it helps the stream a lot.
A few articles and responses, but otherwise it was pretty quiet. You have to be an avid follower of the industry to notice. Notch never really farmed the attention that he was receiving. When most celebrities go rogue, they at least take an interview slot on Tucker Carlson or something. Notch never seemed to sacrifice his hatred of public life for publicity of his opinions. Amongst many, he was still that guy who made the game that their kids play, and they still heralded him from the era that had him as one of the most powerful people in the world. It's likely why Microsoft was so hesitant to drop him, but eventually they realized that their name attached to an article could yield a bit more chaos, especially if Notch said something ill-timed at the event, prospectively poisoning sales. Ultimately, the benefits of hosting someone like Notch, who had no technical connection to Minecraft in its then present form, did not outweigh the drawbacks. And thus, the disconnect was complete. But what was left behind? Now you're mostly up to date.
Dude, it is interesting that Notch doesn't seem to be doing this weird right-wing collapse into radicalization for the sake of some sort of monetary gain. I mean, obviously he's got all the money in the world, but he's like, for all intents and purposes, as far as we can tell, like a true believer of this crazy shit. What does he have to gain from pushing this stuff? He's not a grifter. He's not like a political pundit. He doesn't go on Tucker Carlson. He doesn't go on talk shows to push this stuff. He just tweets. And that tells me that it's genuine. He's really been radicalized into this stuff. He's not lying about this stuff. Like, he could probably be convinced out of it, unless it's all based in entirely just hatred. Like, that's all there is just hatred, maybe. But I don't know. I wouldn't bet on that. I don't feel like that's where this is coming from. I feel like this is coming from somebody who wants to be progressive. Like, his inherent, like, base state politically was progressive leaning, but was radicalized online by people who lied to him and warped reality for him to push him down a certain road. And now he feels like, you know, being progressive, being left-wing, is actually just cucking yourself out to, like, this, I guess, left-wing, progressive, woke mob, I guess. I don't know.
The year is whatever it is right now, who bloody knows? And Notch has mostly faded into the ether, which given the current escalating political climate is probably for the best. As said, many do likely not know about all the antics over the previous years. Some probably hate him for it, a few probably think he's based. But I wonder how he feels after it all. A person who was previously so open about his feelings has become quite quiet. His Twitter mostly observations now, with the occasional tweet of affection to those still there. You can't help but wonder when looking back at his career if he thinks it was all worth it. Person occupies this strange position of having so much yet having so little. With the money and lack of commitment he really had to anyone or anything, he became this social media drifter, just kind of coasting from one topic to the next without any real continuity.
It is wild that he's fallen off so hard that his tweets barely break 100 likes. I'm not saying that, like, social media likes, like, matter really, like, to whether or not you're a good person or to, like, how good of a life you can have, but, like, this is a guy who is so overwhelmingly loved and so famous that, like, he's a household name. He was a household name, at least, but, like, now that couldn't be further from the case. It's wild. Oh, wow, we need a lot more fabric for these sales. Okay, let's sort our inventory and then harvest some hemp.
Free to speak his mind without proper material consequence. Emphasis on material. Meanwhile, though, the spores of being a popular figure had dried up as soon as he'd ventured down the conspiratorial path. Although Microsoft were the only people to officially cut ties with him, there were likely many other opportunities that didn't present themselves due to these comments.
You know who did collaborate with him, though? And this is oftentimes completely looked over and forgotten about. You know who did collaborate with Notch after all this shit? Dream. Dream played Minecraft with Notch after all of this stuff, back during his, like, blow-up. When Dream was, like, really blowing up during Minecraft's resurgence in, like, 2019, which would have been around here, yeah, 2019. That's when Dream collabed with him, and Dream got a little bit of crap for it, but really not as much as he probably should have.
Companies, conventions, associates would likely see him as a liability, and whereas some people might actually care about their reputation, with Microsoft ending their association with him, Notch just seemed to accept that he had made his bet. But acceptance doesn't equate to happiness. I think a lot of people felt a sort of confusion as to what exactly led us to this scenario, and to be honest, it is understandable. The first thing when analysing a person's behaviour is often to search for a motive, to find some discernible cause, and a cursory look at Notch's background and existence wouldn't really point to anything that would lead to such behaviour, particularly given that most people knew him from Minecraft and what it represented to them. Throughout much of his lifespan, Minecraft garnered a significant audience who didn't necessarily fit into traditional societal norms. And that wasn't necessarily a surprise, given that the guy who created it also didn't when he was growing up. Loads of people played Minecraft, likely many with
What is up? Because, like, this is the crazy thing, is that these wealthy billionaires who made art for outcasts are now turning their backs on, like, the audience that they built. They specifically made art, like, that appealed to like the demographic or to the type of person, I guess, like people that are outcasted or not accepted by broader society. Like, Minecraft bucked all expectations, trends, and demands of the gaming industry, you know, like the graphics, the way it was released, the development, everything about it was very, you know, anti-establishment, which is what Notch is into. Yeah, it's hemp. Yeah, we're getting hemp rope. Like, I just, it's so crazy to me that people like J.K. Rowling and Notch, like, after what they do, making this art, would just completely turn their back on that concept of caring and being compassionate about people who don't fit in. It's like, what would lead you to thinking it's a good idea to betray He said, "Look at me, I'm dead now." What would lead you to that like to believing that's a good idea? In the mind of like these celebrities, I just don't understand it. It's so blatantly stupid. Zan, it's Reddit brain rot and narcissistic hug boxing. Yeah, maybe they expect a more positive response.
Streaming diverse backgrounds and political views, and it never possessed a specific identity per se, but over the years it garnered a reputation as probably the most inclusive and accessible games in modern history. Probably a good example of this is how it benefited the social skills of many who have lacked them otherwise. Minecraft has been shown to really aid children who experience certain neurodevelopmental conditions such as autism, with many parents singing their praises of the game's transformative effect.
I love that the meme that like Minecraft is for autistic kids isn't a meme. I love it. It's so good. It's so good.
For their loved ones, finding a community and escape that actually helps them be more comfortable in their own skin. In the last few decades, society has become increasingly aware and sensitive to those who encounter such conditions and the social challenges that they may have to traverse as a result of it. While many regular social environments were still learning to evolve to the needs of those who may or may not thrive in those places, Minecraft was already there, and I don't think that was restricted to any specific demographic. I think it's also applied to many marginalized LGBT individuals, particularly those in the trans community who found solace in a game where your entire life is essentially customizable. It's not just an escape from the...
Minecraft was a game made for people that didn't fit in. It was a game that like did its own thing, that was outside of norms, and like was made for outcasts almost, much like how Harry Potter was like made for outcasts. And the creators of both just decided to stand in stark contrast to the you know, core values of the art they made that made them so successful. It's so bizarre. Make a trapdoor really quick. Yeah, really tired of stuff falling down there. Cool.
The real world, it's the entrance to a completely different one. We discussed how a game can often represent its creator, and Minecraft represented a place that remedied people who experience the often isolating life growing up that Notch did. That's a principle that doesn't end on the basis of personal identity, and therefore if anyone was going to understand the contemporary struggle of marginalized groups to fit in with society, it should have been him, right? Even if you believe that there wasn't any relationship between the creator and his game, even if perhaps people projected too much of the game onto the creator, it wasn't like Notch was ever vocal about any views that would contradict this image. On the contrary, in fact, as I've already documented, the dude announced that every character was genderless and even facetiously claimed that that made them all gay, thus owning the homophobes. He didn't seem to have much respect for traditional gamer toxicity, criticizing tropes such as calling someone gay as weird attempts at insults, and said that although he hadn't been attracted to a man, he tried to keep an open mind, and he's pretty cuddly. After he was informed that a Kickstarter he'd promoted was started by someone who seemingly held homophobic views, he expressed disappointment and said people should be sane. At a time where video game companies...
Gamergate radicalized him. Yeah, he was pushed to the right by the Gamergate era, and the pushback that he got from being canceled for his cringe takes only made him go further right.
He's often stayed out of debates surrounding political issues. Notch's opinions on issues affecting marginalized communities always felt authentic. These days, it's often hard to tell which companies are actually interested in advancing the rights of those they claim to care about, and those who are just playing to the crowd as they always have. You could probably say that disingenuous support is better than none at all, but sometimes you also want to know who's not going to throw your rights under the bus when it's no longer profitable to them. Notch seemed like that guy. People might claim he was just being politically correct back when he had an audience to commit to, but I'd say all evidence suggests otherwise. As a guy whose success wasn't concerned by PR or even dependent on the game's sales, Notch was free to take whatever positions that he wished to, and he did take many in a time where they weren't necessarily widespread. His views on issues like piracy and big tech were considered different for their time in that industry, particularly when it was out of step with big tech itself. He was the anti-establishment figure whose success inadvertently tore up the status quo. The establishment's position on such matters has always been to predominantly follow popular opinion or play to the largest present market. Notch was never like that, and his game didn't conform to those boundaries either, which is what made it such a success. I'm sure for many people who didn't identify with the traditional brand of gamer, Minecraft was their introduction to video games as a whole. I think that's what made his outburst on the matter of transgender rights the breaking point for corporate relations. Despite the numerous concerning statements prior,
like, there's an argument to be made that Minecraft has made gaming more accessible to, like, so many more people. It's insane. Like, how many How many women do you know? Because, like, gaming used to be just such a massive boys' club. And personally, I love when I find out that a woman plays video games because hot, you know? Basically, that's hot. So, like, Minecraft, I would say, has probably been a massive part of more women getting into gaming. It's a game that, like, you can just kind of pick up and play at your own pace, however you like. It's not, like, super intimidating to get into. Like, if you're a woman who's never played a video game before and you want to get into gaming and it's kind of a boys' club and you don't want to deal with, like, the other popular games that are online and you're probably going to get kind of, you know, shit-talked and whatnot, Minecraft is a very good in. Nowadays, it's probably, like, Stardew Valley or something. But, like, yeah.
Notch had created this game based on principles that he seemed to advocate for before brutally turning on. It's not out of the question for people to change their opinions, that much is true, but this just didn't make sense with what he'd created before. I don't think anyone ever saw these tweets as a grift. He didn't have anything to gain from his actions and didn't seem to want to gain anything from them. On the other hand, looking at the evidence, I don't think you can say he was being dishonest or corporate with his views before. I don't think selling his share in Minecraft necessarily freed his opinions anymore. But how can we reconcile two parts of an individual's life that seem so contradictory? Maybe we need to get into his shoes a little more.
Deeper?
When analyzing two apparently contradictory patterns of thought or behavior, sometimes it's important to look at the wider picture and causes, and how they may have interacted with.
I like the style there being like an old like Minecraft Let's Play for a minute. That was really good. Like, turning it to 480p.
Each other. With Notch, I think the clues to understanding this about turn in political positions can be defined by a few constants and variables that impacted his previously rather innocent worldview. So let's talk about some of these factors. The most important factor is that of community. I think if there's one thing that matters to Notch, it's community. It's a complicated aspect of video game creation that he wrangled with for much of his career. But although he wasn't always a media darling and often definitely took pride in having some sort of control in the direction of his projects, he definitely valued the input from those around him, particularly those who actually sampled his output. This began the community of indie developers, some of whom he would go on to work with in creating Minecraft. He would regularly post his projects and interact with other developments, providing feedback and accepting it for his own works. It's not a surprise that in spite of the game's traction outside the forums, Pers remained active there on his account until the end of 2000.
So are we like digging deep into his forum posts to find out what his politics were prior to his dissent? This is super interesting. I like this video a lot. I know I've been gushing about it like quite a bit, but I feel like I should reiterate again. The Right Opinion makes some fantastic videos. This is very well researched and very well made. And as a Minecraft fan and a political guy, I'm really, really liking it. There could be... There are some ways it could be better. I feel like there could be some better denouncements and you know, overall call-outs of not enough room, place windmill, they're friggin' huge. Okay, so I gotta get that fucker high up. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. We'll have an actual windmill we can use to power machines here. Okay, cool.
10. Continuing to discuss Minecraft and general gaming matters with other budding developers. This was a similar pattern with his audience. Although it was difficult to necessarily orchestrate a close relationship with your user base, Notch did his best, using a combination of Twitter and Tumblr to provide a balance between informal expressions of personal opinion and official announcements. He enjoyed attending conferences and interacting with fans. Being a part of something so much greater gave him a sense of purpose. Person also reaped the benefits of a tight-knit workforce in the company that he founded, maintaining the total number of staff under 50 during his tenure at the business. Notch reportedly held a strong personal
It was a very, very tight-knit, like, development team that was making Minecraft, and as I mentioned before, that added so much to this sort of cozy, almost family-like feeling that the game's development had. I know that sounds silly, like a silly way to describe a development team, or like a game's development generally, but like that is how it kind of felt to a lot of fans back then. Like I kind of feel like there's, you know, that kind of nostalgia you get that makes you feel kind of hollow and empty for a minute, and like you actively kind of feel yourself like breaking up a little bit. You're like, like I feel that kind of nostalgia when I think back to it, unironically. Okay, this should be high enough. Okay. I should just have to place the gearbox here. Like this. And then one out like that. And then I should be able to put the windmill down like that. Yes. Yo, that's dope.
Camaraderie with his employees. Mojang's office was based on the design of a regular home and filled to the brim with amenities. Workers would be treated to lucrative bonuses, and company trips involving the entire workforce would be made to luxurious spots to celebrate the game's continued prosperity. Community mattered to Minecraft. As a grassroots game with no investors, it was what kept the game untethered and unimpeded by ulterior interests. And if it mattered to Minecraft, it mattered to Marcus. I think the enjoyment of community resulted from the fact that Notch assumed the role of a working-class hero of sorts. A lot of people from this sort of background could have easily let the spoils of stardom consume them. It almost had the opposite effect on Person, who seemed determined to demonstrate his allegiance to the everyday gamer. It should be no secret, Notch liked to be liked. I don't think this core set of beliefs ever deserted him. However, as the circumstances surrounding his popularity evolved, his position and that of others influenced his perspectives on said communities. As his fan base grew, his activity on the developers forum quietened down. The increasing gulf between him and those who enjoyed the game also expanded. In spite of the claims he was acting in the user's best interests, the situation regarding in-game transactions ultimately broke him because people alleged he was prioritizing corporate interests, something that clearly upset him so much that he decided to sell his shares. Think about it for a moment. One of the most successful figures in the video game industry sold the shares to his company because he was upset at what people online were saying. This may have solved one issue, but it opened up another.
So, like, Notch just seems like he's probably a really sensitive guy who is in kind of a fragile mental state and just couldn't handle the heat. He just couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle the heat. It really seems like it's that simple. Bro just couldn't handle the kitchen. So we've got another problem. That's working. But somewhere along this line, stuff's not working. Like, maybe that's too long? Another gearbox, maybe? That wouldn't be the solution.
After many of his staff seemed dissatisfied with the outcome of the deal. This was a guy who had turned down any and all investors up until this point, and although he did secure protections and bonuses for many of his employees, the principle of going with something he had previously opposed ferociously to seemed to irk them. In many ways, he gained a lot, but he'd lost what mattered to him for so long. With the increased distance between him and the surrounding world, he gradually grew more listless and languid. Eventually, he was left with no community, nobody to properly identify with. And it wasn't like the wealth was the inherent root of the problem, but it was the result of decisions that inevitably isolated him from a lot of people. He wanted to rid himself of the crippling responsibilities that had come with being part of these communities, but had nothing to fill it with, until the internet began to move in a different direction, a more political one.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Politics is something that many people understandably avoid, but it's also something that many people can be sucked into, particularly if they have nothing better to do than firing up the old blue bird and picking the first hot take that rubs others the wrong way. Notch had been outspoken on many of his political opinions, but never seemed to attach too much meaning to it personally. But as a perpetually bored person looking for a cause to latch onto, what happened in 2016 was the perfect catalyst. The campaign and subsequent election of Donald Trump and the reaction from mainstream sources to much of his behavior sparked a backlash amongst many on the internet.
I really like how, I feel like he's done this before. I like how The Right Opinion starts videos off with this sort of mysterious air to the, like very vague and mysterious air to the reason why an individual did something. Like, he's been very vague about, like, what Notch believes and what motivated him here, like pretending like he almost doesn't know when he clearly does. Now though, it really seems like he's just balls to the wall, like explaining it all. I feel like he was kind of leading us in before and is just kind of slowly giving us the drama. Okay, fuck, I have to get down there and then get more blocks. Son of a bitch.
Internet. Not necessarily because people identified with him particularly, to be frank, he wasn't very relatable, because they saw him as a sort of symbol in an enduring culture war against people who wished to restrict online freedoms that had long been enjoyed by those who had used it. Trump hated the establishment, big tech, and many of the organizations that Notch had rallied against in the past. Even though I'd say Trump had very different gripes to someone like Notch, as an influential person, his cause was enough. And in a way, it was the resistance that provoked people.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt, and when I say corrupt, I'm talking about totally corrupt, political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.
A new empire.
It's also important to note that a lot of mainstream businesses that had long been apolitical in many ways became outspoken on certain social issues that Trump was thought to possibly hold power over, particularly given their increasing prominence on social media and the new generation using it who were somewhat more progressive in their viewpoints. I think this sort of corporate movement probably alarmed someone like Notch, as to him they always seemed like the bellwether of cynical, self-serving opinions, and sometimes the enemy of your enemy is your friend. This is what started it at least. Although he had mostly avoided taking positions in past controversies, even larger scale situations, something about defending internet culture seemed to galvanize him. As that guy who essentially had his career launched by the online world, he was obviously going to be defensive of his characteristics that enabled his success. After selling his shares, he had lost his cause and community, but a new one was emerging. One where he was part of the last line against a culture that could sterilize everything that made it great. However, that still doesn't fully explain how we go from this to this. There's still a degree of disconnect. Well, it wasn't a solo effort. To understand the final stage of Notch's rabbit hole of conspiratorial behavior, you have to understand the conspiracies behind it and how they took their grasp on corners of the internet.
Okay,
the
we're
American
going
political
deep.
world was certainly being shaken.
All right, I fucking love the right opinion. I love the right opinion style of doing things. Because to be fair, there are no doubt tons of conservatives. What? Oh, I need more gearboxes to connect these. There's like a limit, so I need to like chain gearboxes up. Okay, I'm going to make this into a tower as well. So there's like a proper... I'm probably going to turn this spot into a windmill, like on the beach. And make like a proper house over there on the hill or something later on. But yeah, that's super cool.
Taken up in 2016, and it's not hard to understand.
But as I was saying, I really love how like the right opinion does these videos where it's like delving deeper and deeper into the topic. It's like boiling the frog, because a fair amount of people who end up watching these videos are probably going to end up being at least marginally right-leaning, and that's going to mean they're going to be highly critical of basically anything in any YouTube video they watch that sounds woke. And, you know, that could literally just be, you know, critical of someone right-wing or someone who's been canceled for being right-wing. Like, oh, what are you woke? What are you on the cancel squad? Like, you have to be super careful to sort of, like, boil the frog. Because if you say certain trigger words these people have, they just turn their brain off and stop listening and leave a hate comment. I really like the way that the right opinion goes about doing this. I feel like it does the perfect amount of just easing you in. Just easing you in. Nice and easy. Is that my dog? Wild one? Oh, we got another wild one. Let's go! 2 more dogs. Okay, this has been a really successful trip already. This is the most dogs we've gotten on a single trip. We've barely left the house.
Understand why. Many people have made the valid observation there was a huge gulf between those in government, the media, large corporations, and practically everyone else. Many Americans saw their lives going nowhere and they wanted something that could give them a purpose. I already spoke about the connection between hating the establishment and loving someone like Trump, but the Forum of QAnon took that idea one step further and provided this elaborate explanation for everything occurring, rooted in this idea that Donald Trump was the person to overhaul the broken system as we know it and bring the power-abusing elite to justice. It took off because it targeted a certain demographic of Americans who felt taken for granted by those in charge. It provided an explanation that played into that moral black and white sort of thinking, presented people with a clear villain, a hero, and a purpose to actually support. Person wasn't like...
This is so good. This is just... He's just explaining the alt-right rabbit hole. That's literally what he's doing. Like, he's explaining it without saying that, obviously, but he's literally explaining the alt-right rabbit hole. That's what he's explaining right now, how it radicalizes people. He's not saying the keyword, but it's there. This is a really good video.
Like many people part of this movement, though. Firstly, he wasn't American. He spent a fair amount of time there, but if everything did go to the dogs, he could easily just go back to his cushy residence in Stockholm. Person also wasn't someone who was disenfranchised at that point. He lived a life of relative privilege. Of course, it was roots from his own product, but it wasn't like he had anything to resent about his current lifestyle at its core. At some points in conversation, he had mentioned the financial aspects of American politics, which may lead some people to thinking he had ulterior motives. However, he didn't have any business interest in grifting because he'd sold sold them all, and these opinions probably cost him a lot more in actual opportunities. Even many of those on the right avoided the realms of QAnon because of how it was based mostly in speculation. For many people, such a site was the most unattractive set of ideas to subscribe to. There's little doubt that Notch's tweets were not designed to reap the rewards of those agreed with him. So what was it? First, let's talk about the sense of purpose that appealed to someone like Notch, who had clearly been understimulated for too long by the world around him. We already knew that he had sympathies towards Trump in light of the position he occupied in much of the media and the culture war that was occurring online. QAnon elevated this idea of a culture war to fantastical levels and made everyone who was a part of it feel like a soldier for a cause that underscored the fabric of society. To many outsiders, it seemed so dangerously far-fetched. That's what made it exciting in the eyes.
This is so fucking good. This is so fucking good. Dude, I hope The Right Opinion sees my reaction to this video, because he's gonna see the part where I'm like, I really hope he doesn't, like, just sort of, like, vaguely talk about the shit that Notch did, like a lot of other YouTubers did. I hope he actually goes into detail about it. I imagine he was just sitting there, like, eating popcorn, watch my video, like, he's got no idea. Watching as it, like, slowly sinks in. Oh, it's so good. Someone cooked here.
Of those who were actually there. It could easily be the plot to a dystopian video game where you're the resistance against a worldwide cannibalistic cabal. There are plenty of conspiracy theories online, but this one had a plot and a finale. One where everyone who stood with the people against the powers would be rewarded. Although it's just my perspective, I think Notch emotionally connected with that. We're already aware of how seriously he took these issues. There is one more aspect about a lot of these radical causes that often brings people together though, and that is the absence of judgment between many people involved in these movements. Notch clearly struggled to find community after selling his share of Mojang, particularly given that he was a paranoid person and didn't trust many in his own life, especially now that there could be superficial motives to befriending him. He seemed to genuinely believe that most of high society that he was part of was corrupt and self-serving, sometimes seeming to long for more organic connections. I think the problem with the real world is that when you become such a well-known figure, your reputation precedes you, and you don't get the chance to make first impressions because they've already been made through publicity and media.
True! I mean, he's a YouTuber, so he knows this, like, probably quite, well. You know, I imagine that The Right Opinion is very aware of this by experience, but, like, I can say from experience as well, like, your reputation... eventually, like, you don't know what the word "your reputation precedes you" means until your reputation precedes you. Then you start to oh, that's what that means. It means that more people know about people's impressions of me than they actually know of me. You know, like, people are more likely to have heard of what other people think of me before they're likely to ever meet me. And that's happened to me a lot.
Media. By existing in online, often anonymous spaces, Notch probably rediscovered a sense of community that transcended his existence outside of those real-world circles. Notch enjoyed the forums of 4chan because he believed that it was people at their most honest and unfiltered. But also a lot of what united people was just the fact that they could be themselves. QAnon was more than that though. As a cause, it provided an unquestioning community for all those who united under its banner.
It was
a real
religion,
us versus them. Something where who you were came secondary to everything else, and to hell to those who doubted you. For a lot of people, this becomes a very damaging cycle though, because the more divisive a conspiracy theory, the more it might actually affect personal interactions. A lot of people believed if you followed QAnon, then you were just too delusional to even have a conversation with, so you could be distanced from people completely and left with like-minded people who may not be the most beneficial to your well-being. The other problem is that QAnon possess what I would call explicable dissonance, a concept common to a lot of conspiracy theories that provides an explanation for why outsiders may expound otherwise logical refutations of the core doctrine in question. These sorts of dismissals assign ignorance, brainwashing, and the very common idea that all will be revealed soon to discredit critiques of QAnon's proposed dogma. People have turned their nose up at it, but it's a powerful logical bind, albeit fallacious. QAnon did appeal to many disenfranchised people, but it also appealed to individuals who were starved of some form of purpose in life or community, things that every person really needs to feel emotionally fulfilled. A lot of old Q's predictions ended up not occurring, and at any point these could be signaled to bring the credibility of such a figure into question.
To be fair, Trump is now being indicted, and I believe it'll be on Tuesday. Trump is supposed to be getting picked up. That might be when the right-wingers decide the storm has come, right? Like, that might be when shit just goes down hard. That's kind of scary. The fuck the dog doing?
But the truth was the cause was greater than even the verity of any individual claim. Ideology came before anything else, even sometimes the lives and well-being of those who were actually part of the movement. Some would rather be a martyr for the cause. These communities also became very insular. When you surround yourself with people who only see things one way, you're very susceptible to succumbing to those perspectives, even if otherwise, in a normal environment, you would dismiss them. Although Notch did not express his support for the movement until 2019, the fact that he was promoting Pizzagate theories barely a few months before QAnon was founded shows the sort of places that he was frequenting. But I think more indicative was how he went about it. In his tweets, Persson didn't seem to have a clear thought process behind exactly why these things were legit. He regularly appeared to contradict himself and seemed panicked and confused, even manic to a degree. Notch always saw himself as...
Well, yeah, the reason for that is that conservatism, or I should say like fascism generally, is not coherent. It does prey heavily on the mentally ill, that is quite true, but at the same time, I'm not saying that Notch is mentally ill here. Well, he may be, but like I'm saying that the beliefs that fascists hold are so insane that when said without a filter, it doesn't take long to listen to it before you realize it sounds like schizophrenic ramblings. None of it makes any sense. It does.
As a man of the people, a guy who was fighting against the establishment, and in a way QAnon presented itself as that too. That was the entry point. But once you're in, you're introduced to a lot of new ideas that build onto each other, and eventually you're hooked on something greater than that, and you're in a bubble where you won't even listen to anything else outside of it. It's a chain reaction to what those flurry of tweets could easily be the result of, and in many cases was honestly one of the milder results. The moral gravitas placed onto QAnon theories makes that fantasy very, very real for some people, and it has led to tragedy in multiple instances, with a subreddit even dedicated to people whose friends and family members have been drawn in by those beliefs.
Yeah, the QAnon, like, family subreddits have been very, very, like, depressing to read. Very depressing. However, we do now have this windmill, like, making our millstone go automatically, so we're now automatically processing the hemp down, so that's awesome.
Many accounts describing them as previously perfectly reasonable individuals. What many saw as a public outburst in Notch's tweets was something that had long been building up behind the scenes, a product of understimulation, wealth-induced paranoia, and existential emptiness, and ironically the desire to be on the right side of history. But what will history say about him now?
Probably nothing good. He's gonna be forgotten, honestly. By most, I think he'll just be forgotten.
At the start of the video, I invoke J.K. Rowling when talking about people who have become controversial through their social media presence. However, the one thing I would say about J.K. Rowling is that she does have conviction with her beliefs, even if I believe they're wrong. For someone like Notch, I feel there's a more relevant and recent example.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
This is Kanye West.
This video is so fucking good, dude. The Right Opinion's literally on the money. Right on the fucking money. This video is fantastic.
A rapper and producer whose music has been widely acclaimed for nearly 2 decades. His outspoken nature on political issues garnered him a reputation, for sure, but one that still commanded a level of respect for its independence. However, that good faith offered to him has ultimately been put under great strain in the wake of a plethora of anti-Semitic comments that do not even seek to disguise the dangerous connotations.
You're not a Nazi. You don't deserve to be called that and demonized.
Well, I see good things about Hitler also.
Similarly with Notch, it was hard to work out exactly what motivated Ye's sudden spiral into such unabashed backing of extreme beliefs, to the point where some even question whether it was an intentional move to tank his career. Although I wouldn't go that far, I would say that a life where you have an abundance of resources but a lack of healthy relationships can cause one to lash out in a way that antagonizes those around you. There are many ways of doing this, but turning to extreme beliefs is definitely one of them. It's an appeal to make yourself as ugly as possible, challenge people to disown you, turn public opinion against you, to change that.
Well, specifically with Kanye, he was of the belief that, like, if he gets banned, or if he gets blacklisted in any way for the anti-Semitic shit he's saying, that is actually a verification that the things that he believes are actually true. Like, he sees it as, like, validation. Most of these people do. It's very bizarre.
Superficiality. Both Kanye and...
Dude, 21 Jump Street made Kanye love the Jews again. Jonah Hill's performance. To be fair, 21 Jump Street is really good, and I'm so excited for Kanye West to become a Zionist after he sees 22 Jump Street. Because that... when he hears, "My name is Jeff," he's gonna lose his fucking shit, bro.
Notch subscribed to beliefs that advocated this idea that some elite class were fundamentally working against the interests of the people. And as individuals who believed they were on the side of the underdog, what might seem like public meltdowns to others seem like acts of personal and
Can you imagine if we wake up tomorrow and the first thing we see on Twitter is Kanye West tweeting, "My name Jeff"? What would you do if that's what you saw when you woke up tomorrow and checked Twitter? Kanye saying, "My name Jeff." And he's learned Hebrew.
public resistance to them. It's a dangerous technique though, because you could easily just convert people to extreme beliefs, but sometimes people don't think about that, especially when they feel like everything's already been said and done. You feel like there's nothing else worthwhile left. We spoke about legacy, how one wishes to be remembered after they're gone. It's a complicated conversation because as much as the thought of being revered by some around you may be alluring, you don't really have the privilege of living that legacy. If you live your life for a legacy, then you're not really doing it on your own terms. For an artist, sometimes it's about pursuing a personal vision first, even if those around you don't necessarily approve. Notch's story isn't like that of many artists though. He's one of the few people who has actually seen his legacy play out while he was still alive. Even public figures who have been embroiled in far more serious controversies seem to have some control over the direction of their image. Yet to many, the conclusion for someone like Marcus Persson had already been written when he moved on from Minecraft. I'd argue there are many who still probably have their thoughts dictated on the guy more from their opinion of his most famous video game above anything else, despite the fact that he hasn't worked on it for a decade. I think Notch was quietly aware of this. When being asked about his legacy, he seemed to show disregard for the idea. And although I'm not entirely sure I buy his dismissive attitude, we'll get to that in a bit, I think he had to emotionally disconnect from it to an extent, or else he would have been a relic in his own mind. There was no way to properly follow up a game like Minecraft, a game so built on grassroots appeal.
Yeah, at a certain point, I feel like maybe his hatred of Minecraft, his seemingly not caring about it, is a protective mechanism for him to feel like his glory days aren't over, you know? Like, he doesn't really miss it. He doesn't really care about it, but he does.
By the time that Notch acquired wealth and fame, he could never naturally replicate something so organic unless he created a whole new anonymous persona. Crafting a magnum opus of such a scale at such a young age with nothing else publicly notable under his belt, becoming a personality so intertwined with that work, when he walked away, it was a death of some sorts. The nature of what he did, essentially opting out of his career with such final effect, giving him no commitment to anything and a massive paycheck that allowed him to switch his life to sandbox mode. If life was a video game, then Notch reached the end credits before he even turned 40.
His life is like a video game, trying hard to beat the stage.
But the thing about the sandbox is that it does grow tiresome. Having everything at the tip of your fingers can often do more harm than good, particularly when you're not a person who ever really had a strong connection to the reward of the process. Notch wanted to fulfill this idea of being a rich person, the next stage of his life. The way he spoke about it sometimes made it seem like its own occupation. But the truth is that it's not a job, and the only perceptible upsides of becoming a socialite was the public attention, something that Persson was vocal about not necessarily enjoying. He wanted to be a part of something, but not the center of it. In the end, his prosperity merely made him even more distant and bitter than his work already left him, occasionally externalizing that angst online. And in spite of some people offering their support or assistance, Big Snoop even offering a trip to the doggy den, eventually the new lifestyle wore out its welcome. Notch was an individual who cared about that community and that vision, but by the time the next cause to commit to came around, all he had was a fuck ton of cash and some social media presence. That sandbox began to transform into a straitjacket. A naturally paranoid and unsettled person, he seemed to find new purpose in being outspoken and politically inclined, but gradually it grew into a set of beliefs much more antithetical to the world he had previously created. Who knows how long it was ultimately brewing. His tweets were a momentous climax in their own regard, but almost as soon as he expounded the theories that drew the greatest response, he dropped them, never really addressing it, just kind of moving on.
But it destroyed him so badly in terms of his reputation, you know? Also, we've basically got infinite food now. Like, I can turn every single wheat into a flour, and that makes a bread, so like we're good. And then I can can it, and the can's stacked to 64, so we're set.
As is with the idea with sacrificing your own public image, maybe Notch got what he wanted, the detachment from the fear that his relationships were transactional. The ones who'll stick around in that scenario are the ones who genuinely care about your well-being. Unlike Kanye, he didn't seem to make any new friends from his outburst, nor did he end up on the Alex Jones show, but it still wasn't without its bruising. Ultimately, it's not really rid him of the title of the creator of Minecraft, just the title of the creator of Minecraft who then became a conspiracy theorist and racist, and a fair few other ifs. Although I'm sure he sleeps okay on whatever mattress a couple billion can allow you to afford, there's still a lingering sadness that the outcome of years of hard work was a name that many would rather forget. but still struggle to, and the
Yeah.
bittersweet connotations that come with the
It's
mention
depressing.
of it. He became a man both known for his best and worst moments, and neither seemed to cancel each other out in people's minds. So, what now?
I'm curious about his take here. There's really not much to it. It's
I said
over.
Notch's Twitter has been pretty inoffensive over the past couple years, which is largely true, but recently the original composer for the Minecraft soundtrack, C418, decided to put out a tweet expressing support for BLM and trans people, in light
All right. Let him cook.
of a perceived rise in hate speech. Notch, in return, decided to sarcastically reply, "There we go, that should fix it." Not actively opposing the statement, but more snidely highlighting the futility of such a sentiment. And maybe he's not wrong, maybe a tweet won't largely make a difference, but you'd think that the creator of Minecraft would be the first person to understand that great oaks can grow from small acorns. And even if only one person's life is changed for the better from it, it's still better than no
it's
change
pretty
at all.
cringe-ass reply.
Unfortunately though, I think it reflects the rather nihilistic worldview that Notch has adopted in the past few years. One that didn't seem present before. I probably understand more than most that it's easy to catch yourself in that train of thought, but for a man who's always seemed concerned about how to change people's lives for the better, he doesn't seem to know what's best for himself. If he did, I doubt we'd be here discussing it today. Notch's behavior post-Minecraft has definitely promoted a strange relationship for many people with the game. When bringing his name up in conversation to those passionate about the game, there's not a sense of great anger, but more just frustration and disappointment. Like with
Yeah.
other celebrities, it's caused
Disappointment.
people to look back at creative decisions and question whether the signs were always
It's like looking back. It's like having a racist uncle or something that like you really want to be chill with, and you really want to like him, and you really want to not have any problems with him, but like, man, he's real racist, isn't he? You know what I mean? It's like you remember being a little kid and having a lot of really good memories, but like, yeah, like it's difficult. It's pretty difficult to expect that to change and to be able to get past that. Wait, will this work? Molding. Okay, then the molding might make corners. Corners, let's go. That's what we needed. This is what we needed. Let's go.
is there, whether they can truly enjoy a game anymore in the context of what he said. What if they're just supporting a game with dangerous stereotypes and connotations themselves? It's hard to deal with the implications of speech, and you can't blame people for feeling conflicted about a game that they may have previously held very close to them throughout most of their life. As he sold his shares, possessing or buying
I'm not gonna
Minecraft,
quit. Like, unless Hytale is like just disgustingly better than Minecraft. Like literally has everything Minecraft has, and then everything, like, if it gives me no reason to ever return to Minecraft, that would be amazing. I don't know if that'll happen. I feel like there's still a good chance that, like, I would still want to go back to Minecraft just for the sake of nostalgia at least, but, like, I don't plan to stop playing Minecraft. Unless, like, another game comes along that's so much better, I have no desire to play Minecraft anymore. But that's different than, like, embargoing the game or whatever.
doesn't really help him directly, but even if they removed his credits, it'll always be his framework, and it's understandable if that makes people feel a bit ambivalent. What happened to that guy that so many knew and loved? I don't think the Marcus person that people thought they knew ever disappeared, nor do I think that he was an inherently hateful person, but I think over the years he definitely became a more challenging and troubled figure. He was never equipped to be a big-time figurehead. He yearned for close interpersonal bonds, the simple pleasures of a creative's life, and he thought that cashing out his shares would allow him to get back to some form of normalcy. But to put it as concisely as possible, his position opened up a lot of old wounds and vulnerabilities that led him down a very dangerous path, and only seemed to halt when he revealed how far he was down there. It traded one form of status for another, possibly worse form of status. He could have settled down to a long life of video game panels, TED Talks, and meet and greets, become a visiting professor at a state university, or just gradually work on maintaining strong social bonds that would keep him from losing his mind. Instead, his handprints on a game have mostly been erased, his mention provokes uncertain groans, and some people would rather credit a fictional figure for the creation of one of the most universal experiences in recent history. He always seemed to accept this, but over the years has continued to name drop his magnum opus in many tweets, still reflecting on that era of his life, maybe only beginning to appreciate some of it properly now. It feels like he's still not over it. Whether all his previous actions were attempts to move past it is something only he knows, but when so much of your life is still tied to one game and its legacy, it's hard to create a new one. I think back to one quote I read in his blog post that if he ever accidentally ends up creating anything that might garner attention, he'll just scrap it immediately. Notch never seemed to find a position in life where he was truly comfortable. I think it came down to three things: resources, time, and purpose. When he started his work, he had time and purpose, but a lack of resources. As the game took off, he had resources and purpose, but no time. And after he sold his shares, he had resources and time, but no purpose. And his fear of ever gracing the spotlight again has often left him in that limbo. In the time that he was in the public spotlight, it was hard to pinpoint a moment where Notch was ever comfortable with his life. And that eternal restlessness is something that can really corrupt the mind. I think it put him in a spot where he consigned himself to a stasis that he didn't want to live with. He loved programming but didn't enjoy the human aspects of success, but didn't want to be defined by one thing, but didn't know how to escape that definition. His love of community and his desire to please people was replaced with this distrust and resentment towards all those around him, and eventually manifested in more and more destructive ways, leaving me to wonder if he could really rebuild his public image after it all. One of Notch's resolutions this year was to create a new game, him making wry commentary on his own commitment to do that. It still doesn't feel like he entirely knows what he wants. Minecraft was one of the most stressful eras of his life. It's understandable he doesn't want to relive that, but sometimes you wonder if he still craves a bit of the taste. He's at a different stage of his life now, and so is Minecraft, to the point where you wonder if they even recognize each other. People draw parallels still and wonder how the two grew so far apart. However, amongst the politics, the business interests, the billions of dollars, the social media meltdowns, the far-right conspiracy theories, they still came from the same place. That was existent before any individual or business could dip their fingers in the pie, and although a person's evolving ideas can retroactively...
He's just always kind of been a little weird, huh? That is a good... I mean... I really think what it is at the end of the day is just the fact that the right specific... These conspiracies in general, not even just the right, but conspiracies overall, whether it be anti-vax shit, flat earth, all this stuff, is literally just trying to offer community to people desperate for it. People desperate for community. That's really what it is at the end of the day. And Notch was someone desperate for community. He had a nice little chill community when he first made Minecraft, and the game was small and it was super chill, but then it just kind of blew up and got way out of hand for him, and now his entire social media presence was getting bitched at by fans asking him to improve the game, and it's like, I miss the chill little community that Minecraft had when I first made the game. Why like, I need something like that again. He may not have even been thinking that, but, you know, subconsciously that's what he was thinking, and what he needed, and he found that community, he found that purpose in spouting far-right talking points online. I think it's really that simple.
Impact their art. The truth is that the place that Minecraft came from could never be represented by any tweet, and the game will always transcend whatever people put on social media accounts. We talk about art, but Minecraft isn't just a painting, it's the whole damn gallery, and so many people will create such great work on that canvas for years, decades, and maybe even centuries to come. So when Microsoft says that Notch doesn't really represent Minecraft's values, I don't think they're entirely wrong, but it was still a part of him. Minecraft is greater than any single person, even Notch himself, but maybe Notch needs to be greater than Minecraft. As most avid Minecraft players will probably know, upon completion of Minecraft Survival Mode, you reach the end credits of the game, accompanied by a verse composition known as the End Poem. It lasts just shy of 9 minutes and takes the structure of a conversation between two beings that present themselves as all that isn't the player, essentially the universe. It analyzes many themes that Minecraft represents, but appears to conclude that the player themselves is the answer to all the questions that they may have.
I really, really like hearing people's interpretations of the Minecraft credits. I really love hearing people's interpretations of the Minecraft credits, because the Minecraft credits are one of the most fucking weird and mysterious aspects of Minecraft, and I always hoped that aspect of it was going to be expanded at some point, but it never was.
You control your own destiny. You control your own fates. At the end of 2022, the author of the poem wrote a post on the blogging site Substack, explaining that he had made the decision to place the poem in the public domain as he had not contractually handed over his rights to Microsoft or Mojang. However, it's the reason behind this and the story that inspired it that is far more interesting. As Goff explained, he was hired in 2012 by Person to work on the final text, and quickly struck up a camaraderie with our Minecraft lead. However, when involving Carl Mane, the business's CEO, things quickly turned sour as they attempted to enter business negotiations. In the end, all Goff saw from his contributions was a single $20,000 check. The contract itself was a pretty standard but stringent handover of all exclusive rights to Mojang, including an NDA which would have obviously prevented Goff from even mentioning this agreement at all. However, that wasn't the kicker. No, that came in 2014, when Goff received an email from Carl following up on the agreement and requesting the signature once more. Goff explains that Mane had framed this as housekeeping, when in reality research showed this was just around the time the shareholders were looking to cash out and were merely tying up some loose ends. With the buyout estimated to be $2.5 billion, Goff felt a bit deceived and shortchanged, especially with how he'd been treated up to that point. He felt disrespected by people he considered friends, and although he ultimately didn't sign the contract, it still offended him. In spite of this and the heated exchange that followed, he didn't seek legal counsel. He didn't formally request his poem be removed from the game despite the furore it could have caused. He merely let it be. He ultimately did nothing and gained nothing from it. And at first he felt bitter and resentful, but since states he has found peace. As a matter of fact, he argues that it was an important learning curve, and although he could have pursued it a bit more aggressively and ended up financially better off, he seems thankful he wasn't, as he probably learned more from losing out. However, he can't properly move on until he addresses the outstanding issues surrounding the copyright. Not wishing to grant Microsoft the exclusive rights, but also not wishing to remove it from the game. He ultimately relinquishes it to the public domain and tells people to do whatever the hell they want with it. He was giving his work back to the world and drawing a line under it. Originally, I wrote a paragraph here explaining why I included this anecdote, but I think I'm going to let it speak for itself. All I'll say is that, as written at the end, you are the answer to your own questions. It's never too late to add some chapters to your story and give people a more satisfying conclusion. You just need to turn the page. Maybe Notch needs to be greater than Minecraft.
This was such a good video.
Yep,
God
so
damn.
there we have it. That's the video. Hard one to end, honestly. It's really hard to think of a way to wrap it up, but hopefully I have given you some food for thought at least, and
This was
maybe
so
something
good.
to provoke discussion. I'd really like to thank my editors. They've once again done
4-hour-long segments now. Yeah, this is a 4-hour-long, 3 hour and 45-minute segment, Cherry. I'm really sorry. We've still got a lot more stuff to cover today, though. Don't you guys worry. I'll be streaming for a little while longer. Hey, Apillo. This was amazing. Amazing. The best Minecraft video essay I've ever seen. And also one of the best political video essays I've ever seen. I gotta message him and be like, hey, man, fantastic video. I hope he sees this. There's a link down below to this video. It'll be the pinned comment down in the comment section. Please consider commenting, and please go over to the original video and drop some support, please. And definitely go subscribe, ring the bell icon on his channel, and comment that I sent you. This was a very good video, and it deserves to get a lot of interaction and a lot of views and a lot of comments and all that good stuff. So go over there and send support. This was a fantastic video, and I could not be happier with it. I did not expect it to be this based, but this was great.